everyone to the council meeting for the 8th of September 2020, which I now declare open. Obviously, as it's not possible for members of the public to join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to those who are watching. So on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I would respectfully like to acknowledge the land on which Moonee Valley is located, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now, councillors, I believe we have 9 in, so we don't have any apologies or leaves of absence for tonight. So next on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 25th of August be confirmed? That is moved, Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Lawrence. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Now, councillors, does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? All silent? Nope. Great. Presentations. Well, I've got a really exciting presentation tonight. I'm very pleased to welcome Councillor's new CEO, Helen Swee, to her first council meeting at Moonee Valley. Helen will be answering some of the public questions shortly. Helen brings with her more than 20 years professional experience in the local government, state government and non-for-profit sectors. And Helen's most recent local government experience includes 4 years at Whittlesea Council, where she held the roles of Director of Corporate Services and the Director of City Transport and Presentation. She is known for valuing, developing and engaging staff to deliver positive community outcomes. So welcome, Helen. It is great to have you on board, and we're all looking forward to it. I'd also like to acknowledge the great work that our outgoing CEO, Brian Lancaster, he was with Moonee Valley for the past 12 years, almost 5 as CEO, and we wish Brian all the best in his future endeavours. Now, councillors, are there any other presentations tonight? Councillor Nation.
Mayor, I would like to make a short 5-sentence presentation to council and the community, as this section of the meeting permits me to advise that I'm not standing for re-election, if I may do that.
Oh, sure thing, Councillor Nation.
So as this is our final regularly scheduled Tuesday night ordinary meeting of council, I'd like to take this opportunity to advise council and my constituents that I will not be seeking re-election as a councillor for Moonee Ward. My very first interaction with this city came as a young 21-year-old who, after moving up to Melbourne from Geelong and living in share houses in Brunswick and Carlton, I fell in love with the vibrancy and diversity of the community here in Flemington. Such started my love for this city that I ultimately founded my business here and subsequently bought into the city and have lived here ever since. I'm extremely proud of the significant amount of work that all 3 Moonee Ward councillors have managed to achieve over the past 8 years. We are the only councillor unit that has remained unchanged over this time, and I'm certain that this continuity has ensured better outcomes for our community down south. In not seeking re-election, I would like to formally endorse and throw my support behind Jacob Bettio, a young, passionate, independent candidate who is a local small business owner and who shares a similar set of values to myself. As for myself, over the next week, I need to assess if, how and when I will have a business when we finally emerge from these restrictions and the potential work I will need to put in to get it back off the ground. But that said, my intention has always been to continue to serve as an active representative of our great city, and as such, I intend to nominate as a candidate for Buckley Ward in the forthcoming council elections, the ward I actually live in and the ward my business has operated out of for the past 16 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. You have obviously done a lot for Moonee Ward over the past 8 years, and I congratulate you on all of the work you've done. I know you've been a very valued councillor, and obviously I want to be equal across all, and obviously there's going to be different candidates in different wards, but obviously putting your hand up for Buckley Ward, you may still be sitting here in Zoom in a little bit of time. So thank you, Councillor Nation. Did anyone else have anything they wish to say? Or presentations, I should say. No. Okay. So we now move on to petitions and joint letters. Councillor, we have one petition being tabled tonight. Councillor Sharp, would you like to present your petition?
Yes, thank you. Just noting that Council has received a petition with 16 signatures requesting Council to consider parking restrictions at the front of properties at 961 to 971 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, to address issues caused by long-term parking at the front of the property, which is resulting in access issues. Recommendation that Council resolves to receive and note the petition regarding the implementation of parking restrictions outside 961 to 971 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon. Point 2, refer this matter to the General Manager, City Development for investigation and reporting back to Council. And 3, advise the petition organiser accordingly.
Thank you for that motion moved. And can I please have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gacha-Marici, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those in favour? Yep, that is carried unanimously. Were there any other petitions or joint letters for tonight? Nope. Okay, so we now move on to public question time, and we have received questions from 4 members of the community for tonight's meeting. As we do not have residents in the public gallery tonight, I propose we move to suspend the provisions in our governance rules which requires questioners to be present in the gallery. That will enable me to read the questions that have been submitted in advance and for the CEO to read the responses. Councillors, can I please have a mover that Council resolves to suspend the public question provisions in its governance rules to allow questions from the gallery to be read by the Mayor and responses read out by the CEO for this meeting?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Moved Councillor Sarais. Seconded Councillor Nation. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, so tonight's first 2 questions are in relation to tonight's report 10.1 48 Hood Street Airport West, application MB/785/2019, construction of a 4-storey building and use of the land as a caretaker's house. The first question is from Matt Cristino. Matt's question reads, what question is there for us residents directly impacted by the application? Thank you for your question, Matt, and I will now ask the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond. For your first ever question and answer, new CEO, so welcome to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, there's no compensation available to residents who may be impacted by planning applications and developments. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Helen Swee. Now, the second question is from Valentina Condemi. Thank you, Valentina, for your question. Valentina's question reads, what is Council or the developers going to do to address issues relating to overshadowing due to the height of the building, overlooking drainage impact, traffic and parking congestion and increased noise? Thank you, Valentina, for your question. And again, I will turn to CEO Helen Swee for a response. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Mayor. Please note that response is based on officers' recommendations contained in the report, which may or may not be the same as what Council may decide tonight. So I will now try and address your questions one by one. Regarding the concern of overshadowing, the submitted shadow diagrams have been prepared at the equinox and demonstrate the impacts of the proposed shadowing will be a minimal increase in overshadowing beyond the existing shadow cast at 9 a.m. However, from 12 p.m. onwards, there will be no impact as a result of overshadowing. Regarding the concern of overlooking, conditions have been proposed within the recommendation to require windows within the western elevation be screened to 1.7 meters in height to limit any overlooking impacts to the adjoining properties. Regarding drainage impact, Council's Development Engineering Department has reviewed the proposal and is satisfied, subject to standard conditions. Those conditions have been included within the recommendation. Regarding traffic and parking congestion, The proposed development fully complies with the car parking requirements in accordance with Clause 52.06 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Regarding the concern of increased noise, conditions have been included within the recommendation requiring the provision of an acoustic fence along the western boundary of the parking area to limit any unreasonable noise impacts to the adjoining residential land, including conditions to comply with state environment protection policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, for your answer, and thank you to Valentina for your question. Now, the next question is from Brenda Paris. Thank you, Brenda, for your question. Brenda's question reads, what procedure or permit is required to take the No Soft Drinks for Me campaign to the primary school children of Moonee Valley City Council? And again, I'll ask the CEO, Helen Sweet, to please respond.
Thank you, Mayor. The initiative aligns with the Council's current Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, which outlines key strategies to support initiatives that give children a healthy start to life and improve health and well-being across the life course and address social determinants of health. Local government does not have the authority to instruct schools to deliver such programs, which falls under state government and the Department of Education and Training and the local school councils. Each individual school would be responsible for any decision to implement a new program. We would suggest that you speak to the Western Region Department of Education office located in Footscray. You could also contact the Maribyrnong Moonee Valley Local Learning and Employment Network, which works with schools across Moonee Valley. We will provide contact details for both organizations through email. Thank you.
Thank you for the question and thank you for the response. Now, our final question for tonight is from Katrina Hodgson. Thank you, Katrina, for your question. Katrina's question reads, with universal kindergarten coming to Moonee Valley in 2022, what plans are there in place to increase the number of kinder placements available for Moonee Valley families? Thank you, Katrina, for your question. And again, I'll pass over to CEO Helen Sweet for your response.
Thank you, Mayor. The Victorian Government is introducing universal funded 3-year-old kindergarten to lift children's learning and development outcomes and help reduce the cost of living for families. Moonee Valley as a local government area will be eligible for funding in 2022, and planning is currently underway to understand services' existing capacity in terms of workforce, infrastructure, and service operations. Council is working with the Department of Education and Training to understand how the local context and existing information can help develop a kindergarten infrastructure and service plan. This will bring local government information and departmental estimates together to create a shared position on expected supply and demand for universal kindergarten over the next 10 years. The Education State Early Childhood Reform Agenda for early childhood education and care is being phased in over 10 years and is consistent with the MV 2040 Fair Action Plan to ensure our municipality is a city with a dynamic network of accessible community facilities and services. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina, for the question, and to CEO Helen Sweet for your responses. And as I was saying before, welcome Helen on board to the MVCC team. And you've now done your first question, so I'm sure you're right settled in for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
No problems. Now, councillors, we don't have any reports from delegated committees tonight, so we will move straight on to reports. Item 10.1 on the agenda is 48 Hood Street, Airport West, lot 974 on PS 008376, construction of a 4-storey building and use of the land as a caretaker's house. Councillors, do I have a motion?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Is there a seconder for that motion, or it will lapse?
Madam Mayor, I will
Councillor-
second it for discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. This application before us is for an office building, effectively, with a caretaker's residence up top. The location is situated within a commercial zone, hence it's a 4-storey proposal. I do understand there's been some concerns regarding overlooking and regarding some issues in the immediate surrounds. With this one, I do note that the plans have been drawn to reduce any overshadowing and overlooking. It's the way the building is designed. That aspect sort of that is in the rear yards of the residential components on Bowes Avenue is reduced by only being 2 stories. So this one is difficult to a degree, I guess, because it's on that residential interface, but seeing as the commercial zone takes precedence in this area, I'm not sure that we would have much luck at all with VCAT and be spending upwards of 50, 70 odd thousand to defend something that is pretty much well within the zoning on this site. So supporting that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sorais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I seconded this motion so that it would be put up for debate on the floor. I don't agree with it, and if this motion is lost, I will be foreshadowing a refusal on this. The reasons that I state that is that when you look at the actual site and what is existing there at the moment, which is a 1-storey dwelling, and though that is part of an interface between the commercial and the residential section, the surrounding area is a mix of commercial and residential developments, and to the west of the site there are 3 1-storey residential properties, while to the north and east there are commercial properties. So for me, my concerns are that the proposed height of the development at 16.6 metres, as opposed to a 1-storey dwelling there, is excessive, and I think it will result in unreasonable overshadowing. And the location of the parking area on this application, I think, is unreasonable and may have noise impacts on the surrounding adjoining properties to the west. So as far as I'm concerned, I seconded the motion that Councillor Sharp moved. I think that there were some issues with some front setbacks that you were concerned about yourself, Madam Mayor, but that doesn't seem to have been captured in the motion that Councillor Sharp moved. Even though there are only 3 objections to this applications, the concerns primarily related to impacts on traffic and parking, height, built form and amenity impacts. So I will be foreshadowing a refusal should this be unsuccessful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I understand why there is potential pushback with this application based on the size of what's there now and what is proposed there. But I think it's important for us as a council to work out what we want that industrial area of Airport West to ultimately become, because the current structure plan for that area encourages this sort of development. It's trying to encourage commercial offices and take a little bit of that business possibly from over Essendon Fields. So I worry that by refusing this application, it's not consistent with everything that we hope that area is going to be in 10, 20 or 30 years. we know through council studies that commercial office space is limited. And this is a unique use of a block, but an attempt to fill that void and that dearth of office space in that area. So I acknowledge that it is different to what is there, but it is commercial zone. Its height is consistent with the intent of the Airport West Major Activity Centre structure plan. There are some setbacks, obviously, from the fence to the first floor, second floor setback, third floor setback, and only one residential dwelling. So I just think it's a case we've got to be careful of what we approve and what we refuse, because we do, in our council documents, look at this Airport West area as being a potential area of turnover in terms of dwellings and turning it into a little commercial hub. And I would have thought that this sort of application ticks the box with a lot that we're trying to achieve. So yeah, I think we would probably wouldn't be able to fight this anyhow in VCAT if it got refused. And I think it is something a little bit different to that area. So I'll be happy to support Councillor Sharp's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? I saw Councillor Cusack first, and then we'll go to Councillor Sypek.
Look, I suppose I'm talking in favour of the motion. I find it, on balance, a reasonable proposition to build something like this on the block that butts up against the residential area that is at the end of that, that is on that street. And it's a significant improvement to what is existing in the area, and is consistent with the overall plan for development of that area as an activity centre. It makes also some significant inroads into the notion of being respectful, at least, by that stepping down process, so that it minimises the impact on the residents to the side. It's not perfect, I appreciate that, but on the other hand, for local residents, it is being offices and so on like that. It's not an industrial site, and it's not going to be in the future a particularly noisy one, given that the residents are pushed more towards the other side of the building site than they are at present. And I suppose the other final point for me is that it's highly compliant, and it's on a commercial 2 area. And that was just a point that both Councillor Sharp and Councillor Nation have made. Leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. I too agree that this application does comply in a lot of ways, but I do have a few concerns about this development. And one of the ones is, I just want you to just imagine now looking out your back kitchen window or stepping out on your back porch, and all you can see is a 16.65 building in your backyard. Okay, the Equinox plans show that overshadowing won't be an issue here, but will you see blue skies? I don't think so. And as this is much as an interface, and it is, in business zone 2, I still think a softer interface would have been far better here. I don't really understand what a caretaker's role is in this building. I believe buildings that have much more scale usually have caretakers, but something of this nature, I don't think doesn't really need a caretaker's level on top. But for my concern is, look at your backyard and see if you would like a 16.6 metre wall.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. I think a number of the issues that I wanted to talk to have been covered, so I'll try not to be too repetitive, but I really burnt by previous experiences, and that's why, to some extent, my decision making with this is informed by those. And I have significant reservation where we don't have specific planning controls in place in relation to a site about making decisions that are very significant, and what they will do when we actually go to address those planning controls eventually and get them in place. To me, this has the potential to be the Moore Street equivalent in Airport West. And Moore Street, if you look at the design, every time I go past it, I just shudder. And the concern I've got is not the use. I think the office use is great. I certainly question the caretaker space. It's a curious space in a relatively modest, in one sense, building, and it does send up some alarm bells for me. But I have concerns around the design. While I acknowledge that attempt to deal with the interface, a residential interface, it means that from a design perspective, it is not a pleasant design. And I have concerns, again, if this is going to set the tone for, as we move along, what it looks like, that I don't think this would be a good precedent to be setting. I have concerns about the streetscape. Again, this is something that we really need to get right, both that setback, but also what it looks like from a design perspective. And this is not something that, for me, we should be approving on this site as something to be looking to set the tone. Probably where we've got the residential interfaces on the edges of activity centres, we need to be really, really careful and mindful in other parts of Moonee Valley where we've had this experience that if we don't get it right, it has those flow-on consequences for both the residential properties, but also other interfaces nearby. So my preference would have been for this to be stepped back at 2 and then to be a 3-storey. I think that would have been a more appropriate outcome right on the interface. And for that reason, the other reasons I've spoken to today, I can't support this motion as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. To me, this is a game changer for Airport West, and having run a business in Airport West for about 20 years in times gone past, I don't remember, other than along Matthews Avenue, anything that remotely would resemble the office space that this is presenting. And as has been mentioned previously by other councillors, we are lacking in considerable office space in not just Airport West, but the whole of the municipality. So from that perspective, it is offering a different set of circumstances, particularly for Airport West, and it's in a street that isn't overly attractive, shall we say, and certainly not fashionable. But this might be a chance to have our thought processes changed in terms of how we look at these. And it's the only real industrial area we have within the municipality and in Airport West. So I'm looking at this in a positive light, and I see that in the long term, with the right controls and the right planning controls, that we're going to have some innovative and interesting developments that will happen in Airport West, because it's the area where it can happen and it needs to happen. There's so many old, shall we say, grungy type industrial factories up there, and now here's an opportunity to change that. So I think it's a positive move, and hopefully we'll get more of this innovative architecture and thinking in that whole area for Airport West. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? No, Councillor Sharp, would you like to close? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Gaucho-Marici, Councillor Nation, and all those against. That is Councillor Sorais, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Marshall. That motion is carried. Councillors, the item 10.2 on the agenda is the Flemington Community Hub endorsement of concept plans. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Cusack's hand first. So Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry to have line jumped on you, Councillor Marshall. I know this is close to you too. So I'd like to move the motion. I'd like to move as a motion the recommendation that from the officer's report.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. And a seconder, Councillor Marshall. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Marshall and Councillor Cusack. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the most critical developments in the Moonee ward in the 4 years term of this council has been to seek to redevelop and redesign the Flemington Community Hub or Community Centre. The old centre, as many of us know, has well past its time, and my latest information is that while it's been locked down with COVID, the white ants have got even further onto the western wall and it's just about literally ready to collapse. So it's a beyond saving building. Through a great period of time, we went through a process of looking at opportunities to develop and design and conceptualise something that was on a grander scale than what has finally been proposed. We went through the very bitter, and I know I'm going to say it, a hard time in this council over the budget for this proposal. And I suppose that has left a few of the three Moonee ward councillors with battle scars. But I suppose that's also rough and tumble of our life as public figures. Tonight we have in front of us, however, after having agreed the location for this the new community centre, a proposal to accept the concept plan. Now, this concept plan has been out and shifted through the community in extensive consultation, and I was thinking about listing that, but the consultation is laid out in the attachment, and it has been very, very extensive, to the point where there's 3,900 flyers were sent around to local neighbourhoods recently. That there's an animated video which was brilliantly done, and I would suggest anybody who gets a chance to have a look at it. Online sessions were held with community groups and users, and social media campaign to 54,000 people. So it's one that has been highly and well advertised, highly distributed and well advertised, and flyers were put out in 8 different languages other than English. The community hub, in terms of that feedback, the community hub will now become and seek to be registered for certification under the Green Building Council of Australia's Green Star Building rating system. We acknowledge that we've received a $5 million grant from the Victorian government for the purposes of developing the area around the hub, and that this is a substantial effect of bringing forward the whole long-term capital works plan potentially on that site, so that a number of sporting facilities will actually be able to be built, and the purpose for the hub will be able to come online in a much more effective way as the grounds for the sporting ovals, etc., the basketball courts that are going to be lit, and the likes of that will happen. We have the contents of the feedback report are all attached to this report as attachment B. I think that the importance of this hub for all of the community can't be underestimated. We saw what has happened in COVID. We saw on the front pages of the papers and also in the press, also in the media, the television and radio media, and also on social media, the impacts that the lockdown had on this neighbourhood. We know that this is about, on one hand, providing a balance in that community so that people who have a level of needs in all sorts of ways, be they cultural, be they language, be they age, be they young, and so on like that, are all hopefully to be accommodated properly through this hub. Certainly for the first time ever, they will have a level of resource in their community that will work for them. On the other hand, it is also a hub for all of Flemington, Ascot Vale, Moonee Ponds and beyond. It will be a centre where people can come to and be proud to say, we're in Flemington, what a grouse place this is. And by the time a few years has gone by and the rooftop terrace is working, that the beautiful foyer is there, that some people's art can be done, and that jobs will be created through it, and all the rest of it, it's going to be a major contribution to the community. I fully, and I hope that all councillors get behind this and support the fact that now we have a concept, and the next step is obviously to pull out the shovel and start digging the holes so it goes up out of the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Sorry, I had to just sort of give you the nod there, but I know that how passionate you are, and you could have spoken for another probably 5 hours, let alone 5 minutes. Councillor Marshall.
Look, I am just so pleased to be in this position. I really am. As Councillor Cusack's indicated, we had the concept plans out for comment, and as the report indicates, a significant amount of work went into having that further consultation on the concept plans in light of the COVID restrictions that we have in place. Overall, we have had really wonderful feedback, and we've had lots of excitement about the project too, which is really incredibly pleasing and very heartening. A number of themes did come out, and certainly as Councillor Cusack's touched on, the importance of environmentally sustainable design. And this will absolutely be a crucial element of the design, and that's reflected in the proposed motion also. So I very much look forward to seeing what can be achieved with what will be significant spaces for potential solar panels, whatever it might be, but ESD will be absolutely at the core of the design of this facility. We've also had, again, what has been from the start of any discussions about this, what has been a strong and ongoing desire for basketball facilities. And it's been a common theme, a continuing theme. And what is really exciting is that now, as part of that state government grant that we've received, that we will be able to have the 2 outdoor lit courts that can be used by the community, and we'll be able to do that alongside the hub work. So that to me is something that was just so important to the young people as we had the discussions about the hub. And now that we will be able to achieve that, not in the form initially contemplated, but still in a wonderful form, I think is just fantastic. Issues around acoustics and ball protection, again, they'll be covered as part of the detailed design project. And what I'm not at all surprised about, and I don't think any council would be, is the wonderful feedback we had about the foyer design. That is just going to be such a buzzing place. I can't wait to sit in there and be part of it. For me, I'm just so pleased that this is one of the last acts of this council that we'll be able to, after what has been an incredibly long time, and as Councillor Cusack touched on, it's been a roller coaster, and let's not pretend otherwise. We're here now, and that's great. But certainly during the consultation, I think we'd all agree, if not most of us, that we saw both the best and worst of what can happen during community consultation. And to be able to move through that, and to now be at this point where we are about to approve the plans for this wonderful facility is just amazing. And I certainly can't wait till the day that I sit in the foyer, have a coffee and look around and just think about how lucky that I was to be able to be part of this.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. So my fellow ward councillors have already covered the main elements of this report. So I wanted to touch on the absolutely outstanding job our officers have done to undertake community consultation with all the obvious constraints of the COVID world that we live in. Some of the consultation that took place, there was the animation video, the flyover that was made available online, showing both the exterior and the location of the building within Debney's Park. Floor plans were made available online and translated into 8 languages: Turkish, Chinese, Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, Somali, Oromo, and Tigrinya. Tigrinya, for those who aren't familiar, is a language spoken in Eritrea and in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia, and one of the languages spoken on the estate by our residents. Flyers were distributed to 3,900 local residents. These were also translated as well. And there were displays of floor plans and the external facade throughout Debney Park, some of this obviously before the latest stage of restrictions. As Councillor Cusack mentioned, there was a lot of social media activity, which is a really good way to get to a lot of the youth that were going to use this facility. And I think the reach in the report says about 54,000 people, which basically means it pops up on the feed of that many people. You hopefully 5 or so, 10% click on it, and you get that engagement. There were online information sessions via Zoom, e-newsletters, emails, and with a lot of user groups down there. And phone calls were made to community members who are associated with the Flemington Community Centre. I must mention, we have some absolutely outstanding staff down at the Flemington Community Centre who have established significant connections and relationships with members on the estate through their many years of outstanding work. And it is thanks to these excellent connections and relationships that this consultation has been so extensive and thorough, even though the limitations of the pandemic. Councillor Marshall touched on what we've done since receiving that feedback. So the ESD work, the addition of nightlit basketball courts, which is courtesy of a $5 million state government grant, the soundproofing to ensure that 2 things going on in different rooms aren't impacting each other, which particularly if there's music involved, it can happen. And the ball protection as well, so making sure that there's protection at the end of the sports fields. But that foyer area is definitely something that we received great feedback on, and this facility is all about welcoming everyone. So that idea that people can drift in and out of the facility, don't have to be part of any formal programming, but they can still use the facility. That can be the area to socialise, to meet friends, is just so important. So I'm absolutely delighted that on top of what was already an excellent project, that through this further consultation work, those who will be using the centre the most have been listened to, and their feedback has been incorporated into this final concept plan. So I commend this motion to you, councillors. Let's endorse these final concept plans. And as Councillor Cusack said, let's get digging and start to roll out this really amazing project.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Sorais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I endorse what the other councillors of the ward have said. I think that this has come a long way. We've gone through all the hurdles to finally get to this point. I suppose I'm probably a little bit of a grudge, I suppose. I'm thrilled that the state government have provided $5 million towards this. However, I guess I was a little disappointed that only the ward councillors and yourself and the CEO and staff were invited to a meeting that was held with the minister that announced that $5 million, and other councillors were left out, even though she'd actually praised Moonee Valley Council for making a contribution. I think it's in the excess of $20 million that we're providing for this facility. I just think that, you know, things like that are a little bit uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. But I'm glad to see that this has come forward, that we've had the community consultation on it, and the plans and designs are amazing. And I hope that at the end of the day, when it is all completed, maybe I can join Councillor Marshall for a coffee in that foyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. I will note we are obviously extremely grateful for the $5 million from the state government that Councillor Sorais touched on. Obviously, the invites were sent to the mayor and the ward councillors. There's only so many people that can be invited to these things sometimes, but I understand where you're coming from. But we are extremely grateful for all the work that's gone into that. And thank you to the officers. And it's always great when we get big, nice big checks, especially towards a project that is so worthy that you've just heard about from the councillors. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Item 10.3 on the agenda is the Keele Road Streetscape Plan. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the council resolves to A, endorse the Keele Road Nidri Streetscape Plan. B, instruct officers to investigate the opportunity to incorporate a curb and channel upgrade to Department of Transport road assets at the same time as undertaking streetscape works on the southern side of the street. And C, investigate feedback relating to lighting, artwork, decoration, bike lane and intersection improvements for possible inclusion in the streetscape plan and as part of the broader planning for the local area in collaboration with relevant teams and authorities.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Is there a seconder for that motion? A seconder, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, Madam Mayor, thank you. So with the Nidri Streetscape Plan consultation, we advertised, this was sent out on Council's Your Say webpage from Tuesday the 14th of July till Tuesday the 28th of July. A consultation period was advertised via a letterbox drop to all businesses within the project site area, 2 social media posts on Council's Facebook page, and a direct communication to the Keele Road Traders Association. So the draft streetscape plan was informed via earlier community consultation results undertaken in 2019. The community were invited to respond to the following 3 survey questions. 1, how do you use Keele Road? A, I shop or live nearby. B, I run or work in the business there. C, I own a business there. D, and other. 2, what do you love about the draft streetscape plan? And 3, is there anything you dislike about the draft streetscape plan? So from the community feedback results, we had 405 visits to Council's Your Say page, and the draft streetscape plan was downloaded 239 times, 49 survey responses via the Your Say page, 1 written submission, and the site reached 15,000 people from 2 social media posts. In relation to the responses that we received, as far as the environmental impact assessment was concerned, no environmental impact assessment has been undertaken. However, the plan to include canopy trees and other vegetation will create cooler streets and provide habitat for insects and birds, which is an expected benefit. Another environmental benefit will be diversion of stormwater into garden beds. This is a plan that is looking at capital works proposed in the plan that would cost around $2.5 million, but they will be subject to future council budget bids. As far as the responses were concerned, the only probably negative thing that came back was that there were some concerns about people of different ethnic backgrounds that weren't aware of the consultation. So the response from council was that over the development of the project, council has consulted with the community, local traders and restaurateurs through on-site pop-up consultation in Wallace Mall, postcards and letters to residents and shops, meeting with traders and restaurateurs and online material. The consultation summary of the first consultation can be found on the Keele Road Your Say page. There was mostly people were supportive of street furniture upgrades. There was concerns about traffic and parking. So all of those that came through would be addressed and will be notified from the officers once they have completed compiling all of the results from that survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Councillor Marshall.
Look, I wasn't expecting to be second this, so it's not one of my a project in my ward, but certainly didn't want it to lapse after noting that for many years, Keilor Road has been dire in terms of its design, in terms of the lack of plan to improve it. And so I am very pleased to finally see that we do have a plan in place for how to improve it. We've got a plan to have increased tree canopy cover. I've expressed publicly before my concerns about ensuring that those tree plantings are the right species selected, and that will be something that really does need to be done carefully. In our part of the world, we've had issues where shops have been concerned that having particular types of trees might block out their advertising. So again, that's something that will need to be finessed, and we'll need to have some flexibility based on particular situations that exist. Having increased garden planting, upgrading footpath and pedestrian crossing, and upgrading street furniture. Again, when you look at the current state of Keilor Road, I think is incredibly exciting. It will make it a much more vibrant place to be, to sit, to shop, to eat. It will be a significant improvement on what is currently there. So I'm very much supportive of this. There will be things that need to be finessed as we go along. And we can say that based on our experience with the other streetscapes that we've done, Union Road probably being a good example, that as you go along, you do realise things that need to be tweaked. And that's absolutely okay. And that's something that will be done in consultation, particularly with the shop owners who are along Keilor Road, and also obviously with other affected stakeholders. But the alternative to just turning around and saying, oh, look, we're not going to approve this, let's just leave it as is, for what has been the area that really first started really getting development, and now has had significant development for many years. We owe it to the people who live in and around there, the people who shop there, and to the people who have businesses there, particularly at times like these, to do the right thing and to beautify this area. So I'm very much supportive of it, and again, look forward to it being rolled out, along with the other streetscape works that we're doing in other parts of Moonee Valley too.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
I wasn't going to, Mayor, but Councillor Marshall just jogged my memory that streetscapes is something that we do very well. And in fact, that Union Road one did win a civic award. I'm trying to just pull it up. I think it was only a couple of months ago Moonee Valley City Council won a civic award for the Union Road streetscape improvements, and the project paid particular attention to elderly residents, and that was captured, I think it was the AILA Victoria Award. So this is actually something that we've done, and we've done very well. And when you have a look at the before and afters of Union Road, you can get an idea about the improvements that can be made along Keilor Road. So I think this is going to be a win for the area. As I said, it's something we've got form in doing well, and it's a two-phase project over a couple of financial years. So anything we can do to make the area easy to access, to encourage people out, be it in 12, 24 months time when they're complete, I think is a positive. So happy to endorse this, and potentially we end up with another award for one of our streetscapes.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the Keilor Road Nutri area is probably the restaurant hub of Moonee Valley, and I don't think I'd be putting anybody's noses out of joint at other street centres by saying that there are some other great restaurants around through Moonee Valley, of course, but they're just in terms of quantity, Nutri just seems to have a quantifiable number. However, and that's a good thing. I mean, there are other areas in our municipality that could do with a night economy as good as Niddry's. Not at the moment, of course. COVID has destroyed so many would-be successful businesses. anything we can do to help small and family businesses must be considered, and it's got to be considered a positive. Increasing tree canopy, garden plantings, upgrading footpaths, level crossings, pedestrian crossings, and just improved street furniture have all got to be seen as positives to have people come and enjoy and feel that the amenity of an area, particularly a shopping strip area such as Nidri, can be improved. And this is a great thing, and one that, as has been stated, will be over a couple of financial years, council financial years, but and it's a partial improvement to the streetscape. And I noticed there's actually more coming in latter years of our capital works program on the eastern side of Keilor Road as well. So all good. And if we can do anything to help our small and family businesses at the moment, we've got to do it. So I endorse this wholeheartedly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack.
Look, I just want to put in my 2 bobs worth, obviously, and I'm agreeing to the motion. I just want to reflect for 2 seconds that if we are, as a community, going to develop our 20-minute cities and the opportunity for employment within Moonee Valley and the opportunity for people to set down their roots here and earn an income, it's the revitalising of our strip shopping areas and our retail precincts that are critical. And Keilor Road is one of those. It's going through, as anybody who drives down there, substantial change. All the old K-yards are going and all that sort of stuff. So ultimately, as the in the out years, when this work extends down the eastern side and down the east, hopefully it will get rid of some of those sad memories, but also be an opportunity to create inventive and use of the land that is being now vacated. And I'm thinking about sort of, down towards where the Preston Motors was and those other ones there. I also note that getting something done on the side of the road with the drainage and so on like that is really critical as well, and that restoration and upgrade of those curb and channel areas need to be really addressed. I think it's worthwhile noting from a COVID point of view, and I think it was the point that was being made by Councillor Lawrence, is that there's been a lot of destruction of people's hopes and aspirations as a result of the lockdowns, not just for the business owners, but also for the people who work in those shops and try to make a quid out of being in the retail industry as workers. And so this investment by this council couldn't come at a more reasonable time. And I think it's a job for the next council, which is not very far away in terms of when they've got to think of the budget, that they should be obviously getting that 21-22 budget sorted so that the first stage, as forecast by this motion, actually gets up and gets running, because there'll be a lot of people who'll be hanging out for those types of improvements to make life better for them and to make it much more attractive for people to come into the neighbourhood and be part of Keilor Road and part of Moonee Valley generally.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor? No. Councillor Serace, they were all in support actually, so I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Serace, Councillor Gaucho-Marici, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Marshall. All those against? Councillor Sharp. That motion is carried. Item 10.4 on the agenda is MV 2040 Action Plans, Beautiful and Connected. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Serace.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the council resolves to A, note the Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Beautiful Community Consultation Summary, Attachment A. B, adopt the final Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Beautiful, Attachment B, noting its 1-year time frame, priorities, prioritises items responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. C, note the Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Connected Community Consultation Summary Attachment C. D, adopt the final Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Connected, Attachment D, noting its 1 year time frame, prioritises items responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. E, allow council officers to make minor editing and typographical changes to the Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Beautiful, Attachment B, and Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Connected, Attachment D as required. F, receive a report to consider the comprehensive Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Beautiful, and Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Connected, which will outline longer-term items covering all aspects of the beautiful and connected themes in the Moonee Valley 2040 strategy. And G, receive a report on electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Moonee Valley at an ordinary council meeting by no later than March 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm just a little bit bemused by what's happening tonight. I don't know why, but anyway. In relation to this motion, in July, Council resolved to receive a report following the community consultation to seek adoption of the final Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plans, Beautiful and Connected, which is obviously what we've done. So we've done some consultation on all of that. So the Moonee Valley Action Plan, Beautiful, will have a positive social impact by improving Moonee Valley's parks and public spaces and making them safe and attractive places for the community to use. With the Moonee Valley 2040 Action Plan, Connected will have a positive social impact by including items that support increased sustainable and active transport opportunities for the community, with evidence showing that walking and cycling positively impacts in the health and well-being of people of all ages. And there's been a huge increase of that, as we all are aware, due to the COVID-19 restrictions and how people have been filling in that 1 hour, I suppose, that they're allowed to get out and do things with either cycling or walking. The environmental impact assessment that was written in the report says that the 2040 Action Plan, Beautiful, also includes items relating to greening, streetscape improvements and master planning that will ensure a resilient environment. And I guess that's where previous item, we talked about the tree canopies and greening our areas more and making things more aesthetically beautiful, better for the well-being of people in our community. The focus of the MV 2040 Action Plan, Connected towards more sustainable modes of transport, will reduce carbon emissions. So get out there, get active, and perhaps not use as many vehicles as we normally do. With the consultation in Beautiful, we had 104 visits to the Beautiful Your Say page, 83 unique users, 48 downloads of the draft action plan, 11 survey responses and 2 submissions via email. On the Connected plan, the Connected process, there were 416 visits, 175 unique visitors, 68 downloads, 17 survey responses and 2 submissions via email. So what we heard in relation to the Beautiful were the general suggestions were for more open space, more trees, climate resilience and sustainability and public safety. And I'm always banging on about that at this council, but sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose. The specific project ideas such as pop-up parklets, gardening initiatives, volunteering projects, arts and street trees. Planning protection for waterways, heritage and tree protection, and planning for housing type diversity. And the responses that we gave to those were that we'd added a new paragraph to provide a clearer link to the other building blocks in Moonee Valley 2040 and how together they lead to a healthy city. We adjusted one of the items that was specific to Moonee Ponds Creek advocacy to be broader open space funding advocacy. Pop-up infrastructure, including parklets, is already being considered by council, and I hope that comes to the council, be it this council or a new council, in the very near future. Minor amendments in line with feedback, formatting or making information clearer, and some feedback received will be included in the open space plan review, which is currently underway, which will be the basis of the longer term to 2040 action plan. In relation to connected, what we'd heard was respondents generally support improving bicycle connectivity, including trialling pop-up bicycle infrastructure to encourage cycling, and recommended further routes be explored. Specific requests for council to install major traffic control items such as traffic signals on the declared, in brackets, state government road network. Specific requests to assist active transport users by preparing maps showing the current and planned routes and introducing more wayfinding signage, and specific request for electric vehicle charging infrastructure across the city, which is hence part of the motion that's been moved. So the responses to that were that council officers will continue to investigate new bicycle routes, and this will form part of the longer term action plan. Council officers will continue to advocate to state government for improvements and upgrades of the declared road network. The action plan includes an education campaign to assist residents with understanding and using the existing and proposed connections. This will include an online campaign and also maps and wayfinding signage. And council officers continue to monitor the development of the electric vehicle industry, and specific actions will be proposed as part of the longer term action plan. So as
Councillor
far as
Sorais, I'm mindful you don't have a clock in front of you, but just to let you know the time is almost up.
I'm done, actually. I'm good. Thanks.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off that bluntly.
No, that's all right.
If you want the last
No,
couple of sentences.
I was just, no, it's fine. I've basically covered everything that was put out in the report and how we're responding and where we're moving forward to in relation to this.
Right, thank you, Councillor Sorais. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was a very comprehensive coverage, Councillor Sorais. You virtually left me with nothing to say, but we'll find something, I'm sure. Certainly during COVID, it's been interesting to note the effect that's had on people's behaviour in terms of physical activity. And I note Councillor Sorais mentioned that we're on a 1 hour physical activity at the moment in our parks, gardens and local streets. But fortunately, we're going to 2 hours come next week, which will be a great relief to a lot of people who like to walk a bit more and are active with cycling and other running and other activities. The good news is that it's reduced our use of motor vehicles, and therefore it's also forced to a degree. And this is I'm not one for sitting back and saying that the restrictions have been a great thing, but they have made our habits a little more, shall we say, restricted in terms of the area that we cover. I like to walk a lot myself, and I cover most of the parks within the municipality. But at the moment, Fairburn Park is probably just beyond my reach at the moment. Steeles Creek only just makes it within the area that I cover, and 5 kilometres you can only go so far. So going north, it's pretty much woodlands and Strathmore area. But anyway, getting back to more important things in terms of this action plan, it's good in terms of its improvement to parks and gardens that everybody loves in our municipality. Parks, gardens and rivers and creeks, they are the lifeblood of what we like to see improved, and they're the real assets of our community. And everybody that I know that enjoys the outdoor area likes that part of our municipality. So this is the beautiful aspect that we have with our municipality, and the upgrading of that. Celebrating local heritage significance is also particularly important, and there'll be more said about that later this evening. And also celebrating the First Nation culture and upgrading, as I said, the community assets. The connected focuses, as I said, on walking, cycling and that aspect, and Councillor Sorais has covered nearly all of that, so I won't repeat that again. But no, I think it's a good action plan, beautiful, connected. It's good stuff for our municipality, and I think we're heading in the right direction for 2040. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just for a point of clarification, I couldn't write fast enough. What was Councillor Sorais' amendment? If you could just read it out again, please.
There was no
yeah, just the
amendment. It was just an item G. If you would
Okay.
like me to read that.
Yes, please.
Receive a report on electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Moonee Valley at an ordinary council meeting by no later than March 2021.
Thank you.
Is everyone clear what we're voting on? Can I just get a bit of a nod from people? Yep, great. You're right, Councillor Sypek. You're happy? Great, thank you. Where are we up to? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak on the motion? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in, oh, sorry, I did put it to the vote. So all those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 10.5 2019-20 annual financial report. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Cusack. Sorry, your mic, Councillor Cusack.
Sorry, sorry about this. I've just lost my place very, very briefly.
No problems.
Yeah. The right. I'd like to move. I'd like to move the following motion for 10.5, if I can. That council resolves to A, note the recommendations of the audit committee. B, adopt in principle the 2019-20 annual financial report and submit it to the Auditor General for final audit. C, insert an explanation note to note 7.1 bracket C of the 2019-20 annual financial report that reads, increase on total remuneration is primarily due to the payments of employee entitlements for separated key management personnel. And D, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make immaterial adjustments to the 2019-20 annual financial report as may be requested by the Victorian Auditor General and communicate any changes back to councillors. And finally, E, nominate and authorise the Councillor Samantha Byrne and one other councillor to certify on behalf of council the annual financial report in the final term. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor, this is the trouble with only having one screen. You can only jump to one thing at a time. So the annual financial report has been compiled and been through the background through the audit committee, and so some suggestions were made for changes. The Victorian Auditor General's Office completed its external audit of the 2019-20 annual financial report on the 12th of August, and the audit committee looked at it on Monday, the 24th of August. And it's to be signed, and the final report is to be signed by the Principal Accounting Officer and two authorised councillors. The report details, I'll just get my notes, a number of critical things that have occurred during the course of the last 12 months, and that is that clearly the impact that COVID has had on council, and therefore the dedicated issues, the issues that have had to be addressed in order to be able to come to grips with COVID. And some of those are clearly, obviously, about the grants money that was redirected to particular activities and the fast tracking of that money. The fact that council has created a hardship categories and a dedicated team to address matters as they come as people approach council to talk about what their issues are with payment of rates and so on. It also has beefed up and got additional work to the economic development team. There's been dollars redirected to parts of the community, noting that we've got an eye on our surplus, but there was money redirected to parts of the community to keep their services intact. And they were very much the changes that had to occur to support people who are in the aged areas and people with young children, the library services and the likes of that, so that they could all move very rapidly to a non-face-to-face, but a more expansive and clever use of technology-based developments. And for argument's sake, with the aged people, this has meant weekly phone calls to every person who's on our register by way of support, as well as obviously organising the teams that are essential to go to deliver to those people. So the other big thing about this is that the financial report identifies that we've developed a budget for the year, but we're also very conscious of this shifting ground, and that we've got a lot of work being done to look at a half-year review, which will be an opportunity for the next council to actually assess where things have gone to and have a much more flexible approach to the allocation of council resources than tying everything to an annual deal, which would be potentially to hamstring council when when there's an obvious need to be flexible and nimble in our thinking. I also want to, in doing that, give a nod to the council officers who have been responsible for putting together the whole of the financial report. This has been a very, very strange and strained time for council, and it could easily have been a time when we might have gone into the bunker rather than getting onto the front foot. And while a lot of noise has been made on the front pages of the paper by some councils about how far they have advanced in doing things, our council has been quietly involved in getting things done. And while we're not perfect, it's been a matter of trying to adjust and tweak the projects that were out there, the things that were being funded, and at the same time address this new beast. Council is putting itself into a position in order to be able to do that, and that's reflected in the financials and as I said, in the statements, the additional statements that we've made in the report on COVID. I recommend the council officers, I recommend the report to our fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. That was exactly 5 minutes, so well timed. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the annual financial report 2019-20, and it's a duty of councillors to ensure that the council is financially responsible with public money. And although we experienced a reduction in revenue as a direct result of the impacts of the pandemic, we were able to ensure that a continued delivery of essential services and local infrastructure were met for the community's needs. In my time as a councillor, I've been a strong proponent of finding ways to reduce our spend and so as to maximise the return on investment in the interest of the community and the ratepayer. And I don't make any secret of that. I like to see a dollar spent that is wise and carefully spent. Over the past year, we have been asking officers to look at how things can be done differently, particularly during the COVID time, and so as the council is doing more for our community with greater efficiency. Now, as a result, we've seen a 10% or a $5 million reduction in materials and services compared to 2019. And we've been able to ensure the council's overall financial position remains sound, with the reported operating surplus of 8.19 million. Now, although that doesn't, we were aiming for, I think, over 14 million surplus in the budget, with bad debts, depreciation, reduced fees, etc., causing the difference during the COVID time. So I think we've done reasonably well, would be my comment. We were never going to reach that lofty heights of what had been set out once this COVID and everything else that's happened hit, and we've managed to adjust our situation to the best of council's ability, and we've still managed to keep our head above water and have a surplus. So that's a great thing. We haven't gone into the red. We've kept our head above, and we've had a surplus nonetheless. Importantly, we've not had to rely on borrowings to maintain, our financial position, and this has placed this council in a strong position for 2020-21. But I won't talk to 2021. That's the future. We're talking about 1920 at the moment. Now, as a member of the Audit Committee with my fellow councillors, Councillor Cusack and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor John Sypek, I can confidently recommend that Council adopts the 2019-20 annual financial report on an in-principle basis. And I thank the hard work and careful diligence of that Audit Committee, and they are a very diligent bunch of people, if ever I met them, and I can speak very highly of them. But the report now, the financial report now goes off to the Victorian Auditor General for their final audit. So that's it for me. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Cusack, I've just had a question come through from governance just in terms of your wording of point D. And in terms of the reading of it, was it to make immaterial adjustments or to make minor adjustments?
Obviously, Mayor, it's to make minor adjustments, but the copy that I have in front of me has that error in it.
So just to what you were,
So I would, can I draw it? So for the councillors' benefit, point D, which was to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make minor adjustments rather than immaterial adjustments. Obviously, immaterial means that it doesn't need to be adjusted, but
so
minor does need to be. Yes, I'm sorry about that wording. It's only very minor. Sorry.
Okay, I'm happy to accept that as what was moved. I feel like if that's your intention, of councillors okay with that in terms of the slip of work. Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's
sorry, just before you start, if you're planning on speaking on the motion, I just want to make sure councillors are clear on what's been moved. Just as I was clarifying that word. Councillor Lawrence, as you seconded, just want to double check with you as well.
No, happy with that, Madam Mayor. It makes it much clearer anyway.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll head back to Councillor Sypek. Thank you, Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was brought to my attention through the community that I'm a little bit perturbed by this statement that council needs to do more in regards to this COVID case. Let's be quite clear. I fully support what Councillor Cusack said. This council has gone well and above and beyond to support the residents and to support local businesses through grants, through helping with permits and all sorts of other stuff. And and we've responded as a council to this COVID impact. It is also important to note that as a council, we continue to deliver local infrastructure projects for the community, and we'll be able to make use of these facilities when these restrictions are eased. We are actually planning for a post-COVID situation. We've spent over $42 million in our community on infrastructure, adding to our near $2.5 billion municipal assets. $2.5 billion. That's a lot of assets in Moonee Valley. We've got fantastic community facilities for the elderly that have been upgraded, fantastic pavilions. We're now installing lights right across the city. And over the last 4 years, this council has really increased its asset value throughout the city. As a member of the Audit Committee, Madam Mayor, I'm satisfied that what we have seen here with regards to our financial position, and I'm able to recommend to Council and adopt the 2019 Audit Financial Report, and in principle basis subjected to the Victorian Auditor General for a final audit. Madam Mayor, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank John Watson, the Chair of the Audit Committee, and all the independent audit members. They've done a fantastic job. They've kept this council right on tap, and everyone's doing fine. And once again, Madam Mayor, this council has done quite a lot for local businesses and the community and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sorais.
I'm just wondering if the mover and seconder would include in item E. It's just
Councillor Sorais, are you moving an amendment?
No, it's just to say the Mayor, Councillor Samantha Byrne. It's not really an amendment. It's really just making it clear in the motion the reason that as a councillor you've been nominated, but you're actually the Mayor. So nominate and authorise the Mayor, Councillor Samantha Byrne, and whether or not we need to actually nominate a councillor to certify that. Just maybe a point of clarification.
Yep, I can ask that through governance if we need to be more specific. So I'll pass to Kendria Pope.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Sorais, in answer to your question, that is sufficient as a recommendation. It's really up to councillors as to whether you wanted to provide more detail in respect of the position and the name.
So if you wanted to move an amendment, Councillor Sorais, to include a name, or it doesn't actually need to be included? So
I was just going to suggest that when in item E it says nominate and authorise the Mayor, Councillor Samantha Byrne, and if there is a councillor that wishes to be nominated now to certify on behalf of Council the annual financial report in the final form. It just leaves it open and transparent for future.
I understand what you're saying. If you'd like to move an amendment to put in the word Mayor and a name, you are obviously able to do that. Or
I need a councillor to put their hand up to be the councillor, the other councillor, to certify on behalf of council. If someone wants
Madam
to.
Mayor, Madam Mayor, if I could suggest the Deputy Mayor, as he's both the Deputy Mayor but also on the Audit Committee. So
yeah,
I'd move that as an amendment then, or if the mover and seconder are happy to accept those words, so nominate and authorise the Mayor, Councillor Samantha Byrne and Councillor John Sypek to certify on behalf of Council the annual financial report in the final form.
Okay, that amendment is moved. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak on that amendment? No, Councillor Nate. Oh, sorry. I thought I saw a shake of the head, but no, you obviously speak ahead on the amendment.
Look, it just tidies things up. It makes it clear and concise that, you know, the Mayor, Councillor Samantha Byrne and Councillor John Sypek to certify on behalf of Council the annual financial report in the final form. It's just tidying it up. It's, you know, putting the resolution into perspective as to people that will be in authority to sign that on behalf of council. It's not just a, you know, tick off of something. It's an important document. So I think it's important that we have those names associated with it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Councillor Nation? No. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? No. I will put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. So we'll go back to the substantive. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak on the substantive motion?
No, I think it's been covered completely. This will now get signed off. It'll go to VAGO, and with those inclusions of C and D in the motion, I think that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No, and I don't believe there was any dissent, so I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Okay. Item 10.6 on the agenda is the Council Plan 2017 to 21 end of financial year progress report for 2019 to 20. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Nation.
I'll move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. And a seconder? Councillor Cusack. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, it's a fairly self-explanatory report. There is the attachment, which is the full progress report, but under 10.6, or sorry, on page 43, obviously indicates that 162 actions were earmarked for 2019-20, and we're progressing steadily with 80%, so 130 on track. Normally, that is probably something that council would be a little bit worried about, because we do set ourselves fairly high standards in terms of delivering projects at present. But obviously, this does pick up work done in the 2019-20 financial year, and obviously since March, many of our projects have stalled, obviously, with that first lockdown. Some of the highlights, and they're outlined there in the report, but for those who don't have it in front of them, happy to touch on some of the key achievements. So since opening on 29th of April, our COVID-19 Recovery Grants Program has received 163 applications and requests for funding of over 1.4 million. Now, this is obviously just capturing that financial year 2019-20, so there is subsequent applications that have been made since then. As of the 30th of June, so the end of last financial year, 71 applications had been assessed, and funding of $257,000 had been awarded to 37 applications. We know that there have been further grants awarded and are continually assessing them. I think we had a recent group announced last week, and plenty more for us as councillors to assess in the coming weeks. Also, as a key achievement in the financial year, the Clock Tower Centre underwent a transformation into a key creative hub during January to June 2020. And that's been a real aim of council, to try to open up the Clock Tower to the community and not just have it solely there for people who are going to see a show. And there's concept designs now to not only green the building, but also to create this forecourt and even some outdoor performing space, which is really exciting. Obviously, one of the highlights for me, and picked up in this report, was that our first MV 2040 Action Plan Fair was endorsed on the 23rd of June. Now, we managed, obviously, moving it in June, we had the chance to incorporate some pandemic response initiatives as well, which weren't in the draft document. And that obviously all ties into that theme of fair, making sure no one in our community is left behind. The other final highlight, which is detailed in the report, is that upgrade of Woodlands Park. So I know that it seems like the temporary fencing had been up forever at Woodlands Park, but there's extensive works that have taken place, creation of stormwater harvesting wetland, installation of a new playground with nature play elements such as rockwork, logs, steppers, stumps, pebbles, and planting to help children connect with nature. There's also barbecue facilities, increased seating, additional bins, exercise and bike repair stations. And hopefully it's not too long until those things can actually be enjoyed when the current stage of restrictions, or we move on to step 2 or step 3, and the possibility of using those barbecues can actually be realised. So there's further details in the attachment. That's just an overview. But as I said at the start, look, to be at 80% of actions achieved in the 2019-20 financial year, with all things considered, and council being at a bit of a standstill for end of March, April, May, June, I think 80% is a fairly good achievement by this council.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to second this report. It's again, as I've said on a number of occasions, and when we've popped up with this annual report, that this is very much sort of the pass or fail mark for the council. At the end of the day, this is what we said we'd do and what we've done against it. And while 80% isn't going to get you into the much beyond a distinction, and when we always aim for high distinctions, it's one that has been fouled again, and it sounds very repetitive, but the COVID crisis has put pay to a lot of opportunities to finish some critical projects. Councillor Nation, in his moving of the motion, made comment about the outcomes against the Fair Action Plan, Kente Boordup, and I'd just like to highlight a few of those that have come up, that maybe a lot of people don't understand where council's going to in terms of some of its service stuff. We see the bricks and mortar, we see the pavilions, we see some of the transport things, we talk about the retail stuff, but council's been developing a dementia plan, and we've actually got a lot of that up there, and a plan that's actually been written and to support people with dementia and to be able to support different ways of approaching them. The only bit about that that hasn't been able to be concluded is the taking of that plan into business, and so that our business sector gets to understand it and knows where it can play in that. And that's a fact of the COVID, unfortunately. We've created over, and it's being used more extensively now, is the Moonee Valley website, and overhauling that has been a really big job. And the really exciting bit of that is on the 31st of August, we went live with the customer relationship management part of it, which is basic way of saying people can actually fire in their questions to council about issues that are bugging them, trees and things like that, and roads and whatever like that. And we're actually able to now track and do those in a better and quicker way. But some of the other projects that I really like to draw the community's eye to is the lab, which was a project designed to support people in our community who have autism or Asperger's syndrome to gain computer skills, and for those young people to be able to develop up and become learners and capable people to enjoy and expand their horizons, and to also support their parents, their families, and other loved ones around them in doing that. The notion of power of sport.
Councillor Cusack.
I'll only get a couple of seconds.
No problems.
Yeah, about supporting people with disability through sport. The Traveller's Aid project, which is a really important one, which is about advising and giving seniors more information about travel alternatives, public transport, ride sharing, the likes of that. And finally, I think the other big ones is that what we did on the estate, on the Flemington estate, and how the whole council turned itself to be able to support in very practical ways, and really demonstrated how wonderfully fair this council is and its community is in providing opportunities.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, item 10.7 is the response to notice of response to notice of motion 2019-06 planning application processes. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Yes, I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with the following additions. In relation to paragraph B, after the words implement a process, insert the words within 14 days of this resolution. Insert a new paragraph E, update the statutory planning protocols to include the procedure that the Development Assessment Panel, in brackets DAP, must consider all applications under section 97N of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 in relation to whether existing use rights apply to a property. F, implement a process whereby ward councillors are notified when secondary consents are submitted to the council for assessment for planning matters that were originally considered by the councillors in a council meeting. G, implement a process whereby objectors to a planning application are notified and given access to plans that have been resubmitted correcting an error on the original advertised plans, or where there are amendments to plans made after a consultation meeting in relation to issues raised at the consultation meeting. And H, amend the internal statutory planning advertising protocol to include a requirement that applicants be notified that the council issued /approved sign giving notice of the application and to be erected on site is the only sign that can be displayed in relation to the particular application.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sorais. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. This report came out of a notice of motion that I put forward last year, and it was supported by all councillors, which I was very appreciative of. And what it does, essentially, notice of motion was designed to look at ways to improve our statutory planning processes. And it was born from the experiences that I'd had over my time as a councillor, and I know experiences that all of you had shared, when the same issues kept on coming up repeatedly, and you start turning your mind to how can we improve this process to try and deal with them. I'll speak quickly because there are a number of matters that need to be addressed, but in relation to the existing use rights issue, this issue comes up where someone will seek to apply for a certificate in relation to existing use rights, and they need to put forward supporting evidence when they do that. And officers assess and determine whether there is sufficient evidence to actually establish the existing use rights. My concern has been that you get one side to the story, and people obviously lodge information in support of their claim, and understandably that information is self-serving. But we have had situations where after the facts, neighbours have turned around and other people have turned around and said, well, hang about, that property was actually used as this. But by that stage, the certificate's been issued, and it is really quite complicated as to where things head to, because people aren't notified that there is an existing use rights application on foot. I had hoped that we might come up with a bit more of a significant change, but I'm mindful of our statutory obligations and mindful of the issues that have been raised in the report. So we're certainly, as through the motion, we'll be writing to DELC to see whether there can be any amendments made to that process at a statutory level. And for me, ultimately, this is about making sure that it's a truth-seeking exercise, and that you actually, any decision you made is actually a factual one based on appropriate evidence. And I think it's important, given the nature of these applications, that they are decisions that are only made by DAP, and then that you have a number of officers being able to test the information that's been provided. The issue of a petition counting as only one objection is one that comes up frequently, as all councillors will know. As the report indicates, this is a statutory requirement, so there's nothing that we can do about it in the sense that require them to count as more than one objection. But what officers have done is actually have amended the wording on our council website to make that clear, so people become much more aware about the fact that petitions do only count as one objection. Another issue that comes up frequently is where there are errors on the plan that are put out to advertising. And we get to the consultation stage. I'm so sure every councillor sitting here has had this happen multiple times. And we have residents express concerns that there might be a window missing, or there might be solar panels not reflected, or whatever it might be, but the plans aren't entirely accurate. Now, our council planners, as I set out in the report, do actually independently verify the information that's on the plans. But what that often leaves in the mind of objectors is lingering doubts as to the accuracy of what's been proposed. And another issue that we also see arise is where we have plans that are amended after a planning consultation in relation to issues that have arisen in that planning consultation. And the concern is, again, that sometimes objectors only find out a couple of days before the matter is due to come to council that there have been amended plans. And sometimes it might be a situation, I can think of one recently, where arguably if objectors had been a bit more aware about what was happening, they might have actually withdrawn their objections. But for me, again, if people are to have some comfort in the system, then there needs to be as much transparency around the planning system as possible. And you'll see that the change has been proposed by the motion will hopefully do that. The advertising signs, these are the red and white ones that you'll see around that announce a planning permit application, and we frequently receive complaints about signage issues. We receive complaints about whether they've been put up in the right spot for long enough. And again, the report has useful information that might help people understand that process a bit more. But we have had incidents where arguably applicants have put up signs that might have been designed or might have, even if they weren't designed, misled people around what was being proposed. So coming out of this, again, the protocols will require that you can only put up one particular sign in relation to a planning permit application, and that's the one that council prepares. Importantly too, we will be looking at the information set out in those signs to make sure that that information is clear and it accurately describes what is going to happen, which I think is incredibly important, because sometimes if people fall into planning language, it might not be clear exactly what is contemplated in the app. On just briefly, the issue of secondary consents. Mayor, I'm not sure how I'm going time, but if I can just have a minute or so
You're right
more.
on time, but if you'd like another minute, that's fine.
No worries. Again, we've had this situation happen a number of times where a matter comes to council, council might approve with conditions, and then there are changes proposed to the secondary consent process. And it's certainly very frustrating for residents and councillors to find out after the secondary consents have been approved. And we've had a number of situations where this has caused concern. So now we're proposing this new process, which will hopefully provide some comfort to everyone. And finally, one of the improvements that has been put in place, and officers are already in the process of doing this, is for people to be able to obtain copies of plans after a permit is approved without having to go through an FOI process. Of course, we need safeguards in place to make sure copyright and privacy is protected, but it will make life so much simpler to not have to go through an FOI process for something that will be ultimately disclosed, and also not tie up council resources on these sorts of FOI applications. So I think that's a really positive move. I thank the planners for the effort they put into this report and councillors for the support for the notice of motion. Hopefully for the new councillors, that these changes will help improve the life of the new councillors and certainly help improve the confidence that people have in our planning system.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Soros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Marshall, for your motion in regards to the outcome from the notice of motion that you originally moved. So in 2019, I think it was in June sometime then. So just going through this report, and you've covered just about everything that you need to in relation to it. Just a little note here. With regards to 3.3 in the report, where it says the accuracy of plans lodged with planning permit applications, including consequences where plans are misleading / incorrect, and how to ensure misleading / incorrect plans are corrected and notified to objectors. On 3.3.3, the response here is if an error is detected during public notice by a neighbouring property, i.e. a window missing, labelling of a structure is incorrect, shadow diagrams not correct, there are a few options to correct this. Firstly, in the event that an omission or error on the plan does not materially impact upon assessment, like a non-habitable window not shown or solar panels on a roof to the north of the site, the planner may simply acknowledge this in the report and condition the plans be corrected accordingly. To request an amendment of the plans for such minor matters that are inconsequential to the assessment is onerous and contrary to the obligations under the Act to process applications in a timely manner. Secondly, if an error or omission does not have the potential to impact assessment, this will typically require a Section 57A amendment, in brackets amendments to application after notice of application is given, of the plans to supersede the previous plans for assessment. So I'm kind of looking at the motion that you've got here, that would, might be H, amend the internal statutory planning advertising protocol to include a requirement that applicants be notified that the council issued / approved sign giving notice of the application. Would that cover that section? I guess I'm asking a question or clarification here.
So if we're asking a point of clarification, I suppose we need to get to the point of clarification. What actually, so I'm just a little bit confused.
My point of clarification is, would item H in the motion from Councillor Marshall cover that?
Councillor, I'm got a little bit confused with the very long-winded point of clarification. Councillor Marshall, did you catch that.
So I think you might be referring to G, Councillor Serace.
Yeah,
Paragraph G.
then, sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, just want to make sure they're talking about the same thing.
Yes, yes, yes. So that would kind of rectify that statement in the
That's the
report.
intention. It's obviously different where someone has to go through it or goes through a formal amendment process, but this is, yeah, that's
Yeah,
designed,
thank you.
G is designed to address that.
Yeah, it does address that. And let's hopefully this will make things a lot easier and less stressful for both the applicant and the residents and objectors and people living in those neighbourhoods where applications come forward. Thank
Just
you.
confirming, Councillor Serace, that answered your point of clarification?
It did. Yeah, I did. I said that.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put Councillor Cusack.
I just want to say 3 cheers for common sense.
Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. Beautiful. Any other councillor like to speak on the item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, item 10.8 on the agenda is a response to petition amendment to MB 2040 Action Plan Green to include interim community carbon emissions reductions targets. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with the addition of a new paragraph B and then a renumbering, obviously, to the new C. Review the interim targets adopted in recommendation A of this report before the 12-month review of MB 2040 Action Plan Green if the state government adopts more ambitious interim reduction targets.
Great, thank you. And B moves down to C.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Great, thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. So earlier this year, in June it was, we received a petition with 1,853 signatures requesting that council set interim science-based community greenhouse gas emission targets of 50% reduction by 2025 and 75% reduction by 2030. Now, the state government was due to release its 5-year interim targets for 2025 and 2030, and they were due to be released initially at the end of March. That was delayed until August, and then it was further delayed. And from my understanding, at this point in time, there's no date set as to when they actually will be released. Obviously, the state's focusing on the COVID-19 pandemic response. So we have our zero net emissions target by 2040, and for me, it makes a whole lot of sense to have interim targets along the way to actually track how we are going and to adjust our actions as needed. So what's proposed in this report is that council align its interim targets with the targets that have been advocated for by the Victorian Greenhouse Alliances and the Cities Power Partnership. And as set out in the motion, those targets being 44% reduction below the 2017 levels by 2025 and 67 to 70% below 2017 levels by 2030. And there's an explanation in the report as to why 2017 has been selected as the baseline year. So thank everyone who signed the petition. I thank the Enviro PAC who provided input into the targets, and certainly thank to our wonderful council officers who are so committed and knowledgeable around the importance of emissions reduction and climate science. And we know that the consequences of climate change are so broad, and clearly the environmental effects are significant, but also the health, wellbeing and economic effects are immense and devastating. So working with our community and with other levels of government, with business and industry, we will really have to work all together incredibly closely to affect real change. And tonight for me will be another important step in council doing what it can and playing its role in reducing emissions.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Marshall, for your changes and the points that you're making there. I just wanted to support obviously the motion, and also acknowledge the fact that council has taken the move to put measurable targets in place, and therefore acknowledge the concerns that were raised by all those people who petitioned council to think down that track. Climate change and making positive steps forward shouldn't be just done as a feel thing. They should be done as an aim towards something. We don't do that in any other space, but we needed and had made basically a bit of an error in not setting targets. So this fixes that up and gives us a look in on the Greenhouse Alliance targets and a place to measure ourselves by. It also, I hope, puts us in a position where our previous agreement as a council that there is a climate crisis is being addressed in a really specific way. And so now we're tying our effort, not just within the Moonee Valley 2040 Green Action Plan, but also all of those other plans that feed into it that are around it, because Moonee Valley 2040 is an integrated project. It is not everything sitting on its own, because that's where the failure of government has been consistently, and why 2040 is so important, because it is that notion of integrating things so you can create wins in all sorts of places by noting that other things have to get done in order to be able to make business work, to make people's attitudes work, to look at education, to look at how our transport works, to look at how we're implementing alternatives in terms of fuels and operation and so on like that, encouraging renewables and the likes. So this makes, first of all, good sense to get those targets in place. Secondly, to get the right report in place to come on, and finally to link us up directly with what government is doing, and so therefore the state government and council are able to work off each other's projects and plans and so on like that. Because if we're advocating for money to change things within this council, we also need to be able to do it within the logic of what targets are from state government. And so therefore, let's hope that they are a bit more inventive and give us maybe a bit more stringency. I would like to see that happen, but I'll leave it go at that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm very happy to endorse these interim targets, and I think that interim targets are important to help us assess if we are undertaking the correct amount of work to achieve our end goal. The report before the last one, while not being interim targets, it was that idea with the financial report about checking up on where we're at, and interim targets are the same thing. It's about making sure we're on track to achieve what we want to achieve. And we've obviously endorsed a long-term zero emissions target for the community by 2040. And I'm glad to see that as a response to this petition, that officers are willing to set bold and ambitious targets to help demonstrate council's leadership and commitment to supporting a reduction in community emissions as part of international efforts to avoid an increase in global average temperatures. So setting these targets will also give our councillors and constituents a reminder that this is going to take a collaborative effort by everyone. And that effort is going to be different for all members of our community. Some of us might not be able to go out and pay the extra for an electric or hybrid vehicle or chuck solar panels on our roof, particularly if we don't necessarily own a house. But there are smaller things we can do that collaboratively will make a difference. So smaller actions might be washing clothes in cold water, hanging clothes out instead of using the dryer, upgrading to more energy efficient light bulbs, or even just taking the extra effort to recycle properly and to update your knowledge on the best possible way to make your recycling count. For some of us, there might be some bigger choices. Now, in December last year, I personally did something that I never thought would be possible, and I made the conscious decision to give up meat and move to a plant-based diet. And I can tell you that when I looked up how much of an impact that can have, a change in diet reduces a person's individual carbon footprint by 820 kilograms of carbon dioxide every year. That's moving to a plant-based diet. Obviously not for everyone, but it's about having a look at what you can do and not just thinking, what can I do, but what else can I do? And that's going to be different for everyone in our community. But the whole idea here is we're taking a community-wide approach, and hopefully a community-wide approach is taken by all communities throughout the world. So let's make sure we get our community in order, and rather than just sitting around and all putting up our hand to say, yes, it's a climate emergency, you're not doing anything, let's think about how we can help hit these targets, be it small, be it medium, be it large things that we can do. Let's all work together and try to hit these interim targets, be community leaders, and then hit that target by 2040. And I do challenge you, if anyone else wants to try giving up meat, I must admit, the first 3 months I craved lamb cutlets, but over it now, and there's plenty of meat alternatives, so it can be done. But small things, medium things, big things, we all got to play our part. We've all admitted there's a climate emergency, so let's actually put our money where our mouth is and try to hit these targets. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, item 10.9 on the agenda is the proposed road discontinuance and sale of land right of way abutting rear of 46 Alfred Road and 51 Amelia Avenue, Essendon. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gatchmarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchmarici. And a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Gatchmarici, would you like to speak on the item?
Just very briefly, it's a small section of land between two properties and the owners have requested us to consider it. So this kicks off the process of public notice, and then it comes back as a report to decide whether to continue the process or not. So,
thank you, Councillor Gatchmarici. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is a procedural situation, a discontinuance first, and then potentially a sale of land to the two properties, one being at 46 Alfred Road and the other at 51 Amelia Avenue in Essendon. It's sensible. It's a result that will see the subdivision of a small parcel of land that is obviously surplus to council's needs, and something that happens from time to time in our municipality. So a good thing, and yes, let's hope it all comes to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.10 on the agenda is the COVID-19 recovery grants update. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence.
I'd like to move a motion in the way of the officer's recommendation. Sorry.
Sure thing, Councillor Lawrence. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Nation. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is a reallocation essentially of some of our event and festival funds, 200,000 to be exact, that will be redirected from that area of council expenditure into the COVID-19 recovery grants program. And I commend both council officers and councillors to, well, firstly, council officers for putting it forward, and hopefully councillors for agreeing with it, that we now have extra funding in our grants program for local businesses and other organisations, but essentially businesses that need support during this very difficult time. And it will be done over 2 rounds in 2021 with 100,000 per round, and it will subsidise what would have been just a smaller amount. And we've now got a pool of funds that we can support our local businesses, both small and family businesses, that are doing it exceptionally hard with this restriction that just goes on and on and on. And we know how difficult that they're doing it. All the support that they're getting is only going so far, and if we as a council can put out a lending hand to support our local businesses, well, it's not just our local businesses that will hopefully be supported, but also the people that they employ that live within the local area. And I keep harping on about supporting our local businesses, but it's so essential because people will ultimately lose their livelihoods. And you know, it's easy to say that, but it's very painful to experience it. So I would say that this is a small way that council recognises those serious issues, and we're now actually adding more into our pool of funding for the COVID recovery grants program. So I commend it to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to support this motion. And what it does mean, it means that we're not going to have many events next year, but I think that's a bit of a given that our events and festivals program is going to be extremely light on. And by reallocating that money, as Councillor Lawrence has mentioned, it means that we can actually have a grant stream in the second half of this financial year. So the report shows that, and I spoke about it in the financial progress report, that the amount of grant funding or the amount of grant requests that we've received far has exceeded the allocation of funds. And that's to a point that the current round of grants, which are being assessed over the next couple of weeks, would have used up all our grant funding for the whole financial year. So by taking this money out of the festival and events budget and allocating it to 2 more rounds in the new year, still within this financial year, it will mean that we can target that support to local groups, local businesses, local artists, and help them in this recovery phase, because the first tranche of grants has really just been almost helping businesses and community groups exist through the lockdown and shutdown and the increase of restrictions, particularly over the past 5 or 6 weeks. But this next round of grants that will be start of next year, and then the final one within the financial year, will just mean that we can continue to support local groups, local businesses, give them a leg up, help them back on the road to recovery. And it's important that we're playing that role, because while some groups and some businesses and some artists have been able to access funding, we know that even the business support in the recent Victorian Business Support Expansion Package, not all businesses are able to access it, not all sole traders can access it, similar to the COVID cash boost and other grant streams. So this is an important way of adapting what we're doing on the run to support those that need the most support. I really encourage that while our grants are heavily subscribed, if you've got a project or your group or your business needs it and can justify it, then put in a grant application, because we obviously will have some extra funds to award. So yeah, I'm more than happy to support this, and I think it's just a reality check. Events and festivals aren't going to happen for some time, so let's put the money in where it's needed. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like in our financial report, I mentioned that there've been sort of, rumours out there saying that council's done nothing for this COVID recovery. Well, as you can hear, we are doing quite a lot. We are doing more than some other councils are doing. We're redirecting funds where they need to be, and those funds are being redirected to support our community, our local businesses, and our residents throughout this COVID pandemic. And also with our own infrastructure investment, we are also looking at post-COVID, and this is where the great help's going to happen. And with our diversion of our funding, this is where we're going to support our communities and our local businesses, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor? Councillor Marshall.
Look, I'm very happy to speak in support of the motion, and I like things that are pragmatic, and this is very much pragmatic in terms of our ability to have festivals and celebrations over the coming months will be limited, if existing at all. So I think it makes an awful amount of sense to divert the funds to our grant stream and to support people, as Councillor Nation has referred to, people who can't access the other streams that might be available. I'd certainly probably like to see some priority given there for people who can't access funds at other levels of government. But also, I suppose I'd just say to anyone in business who is struggling, or any artist who's really struggling, feels overwhelmed about completing a grant application, please reach out, speak with our council officers, because they can provide assistance and help you through that process. So there are resources at hand to be able to assist you. Don't feel that you've got to sit there and wade through the grant applications by yourself without any aid. We do have people who can provide assistance to you. They're not too complicated, and that is intentional. So please just know that council will do what it can to support you. Obviously, we need to support grant applications that are complying, and there is a limited pool of money, and that's just the reality. But you're not on your own, so please reach out if you do need assistance at all.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor? Councillor Therese.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This item says COVID-19 recovery grants update, and I'm just reading through it, and it says on item 3.1, the program has received an unprecedented response from local business and community groups. Since opening on 29th of April 2020, the program has received requests for funding of over 2.9 million. To date, 210 applications have been assessed, and funding of 455,274 has been awarded to 62 applications. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is because previously, when we adopted the Council Plan 2017 to 21, end of financial year progress report, there was noted there, and it has been said that we'd received 163 applications. So when that report must have been written, it just shows the amazing increase that we've had in applications coming forward for these grants. So 100% I support this motion, whereby we're allowing further allocations of 100,000 per round to be delivered in 2 quarters in the 2020-21 financial budget. So I'm very pleased to see that this has come forward, and as Councillor Nation has said, we won't be having a lot of those other festivities and things, so in order to spread this funding around across the community when it's needed now is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Therese. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't take long. All I want to do is make a note that what's occurring in our grants and what's starting to emerge is some really good ideas from the community and from the people who are actually asking for some of these grants. And so the next trick in all of this will be for council to start to look and evaluate these grants and the outcomes, evaluate the outcomes of these grants, because I think that there are some lovely and informative ways that council can work with businesses down the track and for emerging activities in the terms of job seekers and people who are being trained in the world of work. Councillor Nation mentioned the arts stuff. That's a relatively recent addition to the grants, And we know that there are many, many artists who are who are attempting either to commercialise their effort or continue to develop their craft and practice, and without being able to work with community and work with groups or to present things, it's very, very difficult for them to continue to do one or either of those aspects of their work. And I'm afraid that, and I suppose that what I'd also like to say is that the grants need to also drive for council some of our own thinking down the track about where some of our infrastructure and investment goes into in the future in terms of the eco development. I already mentioned the evaluation side of things, but I think there's also questions around how we become a smart council in terms of the application of IT and so on like that, and move into those future areas. And the final thing is that it's a great shame that the Flemken Festival of Arts and Ideas mightn't get a Guernsey, but just picking up what Councillor Marshall said, if you've got good ideas, come to council. Don't worry about, I mean, sit down and have a conversation with either councillors or the eco development people while all the election palaver's up in the air, and sit down and talk about what needs are really out there. And don't be silent on this, because it's all about being quick to respond, not wanting to be a hurdle in terms of being a response.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, so we are now through the report. So we're up to notices of motion, and we do have 5 for tonight. So the first notice of motion, item 11.1 on the agenda, is notice of motion number 2020-16-2020-16, sorry, external advice for planning application MB3-2020. And I call on Councillor Gatsmarucci.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that in relation to the planning application for the former North Park Estate 45 to 69 Woodland Street, Essendon, application MV3/2020, external input be sought as soon as possible from 1, the Office of the Victorian Government Architect for their advice on referring the project to the Victorian Design Review Panel, which is bracket VDRP, and 2, an experienced external heritage consultant and a landscape architect or arborist experienced in heritage sites listed on Council's panel of consultants for peer review of Council application once all submissions and referrals are complete, to assist in the assessment and propose recommendations with regard to the aspects that Council must have regard for this application.
Thank you, Councillor Gatsmarucci. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Gatsmarucci, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is obviously a incredibly significant application in our ward, and this motion basically aims to provide us with the information that we need to best consider our decision and inform the officer's recommendations. So in terms of the 2 parts that have been proposed, the first one about contacting the Office of the Victorian Government Architect and asking for their advice if the project can be referred to the Victorian Design Review Panel. That's not guaranteed, and it's important to note that, but we certainly want to ask whether it can be referred. And that panel, for those who don't know, provides independent expert advice on significant projects. So they've got a range of expertise in individually landscape architecture, cultural heritage, as well as urban design. So particularly given the heritage context of this site and the significance compared to the mansion and the lands and the proposed development, they may be best placed to provide some of this advice. And if the advice of the Victorian Government architect is that it can be referred to the panel, then the panel can consider and advise those things around the context of site, including heritage covenants and conservation. So the second part of the motion ensures that we have external review of the application, including regarding heritage and landscape, and that that's undertaken to inform the assessment of the application and recommendations. Whilst I would like to think or presume that might happen, it's just really important for us to make sure that definitely does happen, which is where that comes from. As we mentioned, it's such an incredibly significant application in terms of the site and its context, and in terms of the proposed outcomes for the area. So pursuing these avenues of review is incredibly important to ensure that any decision that occurs is done so with the full consideration of these factors. I'm mindful that we've had a number of emails about a second motion that might be tonight, but we still also have a development application before us. So this motion is about being pragmatic in how we consider the application that is before us in a way that is best informed by those who can give us proper advice. So I would ask the other councillors for their support on it.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchimarici. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. Happy to support Councillor Gatchimarici in this notice of motion. I think the more information that we have, can you still hear me? Yep. The more information that we have will obviously be of benefit, and as Councillor Rebecca has mentioned, these are independent panels, certainly very experienced in with what they do. Thank Councillor Gatchimarici for the initiative to put this up. It will certainly help, I believe, and yeah, happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I think the idea of getting as much information about any application, and just so our viewers and residents understand, this application hasn't come before council yet, and we haven't been informed about all the details of the application as such. So I guess we're trying to put the horse before the cart slightly, in that we get as much information as councillors, and particularly ward councillors, because we've not even had a consultation meeting about this application at this stage. So it's only just in the planning department's forte at the moment. And just so that is clear, that this information and the panel, Victorian Design Review Panel, is only another avenue for getting further information. It still remains within our planning department for reports and so forth to come back to council with further advice from these bodies. So I think any extra information that I can get as a councillor and my fellow councillors get, then it's got to be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Marshall.
Yes, I'm also very much happy to speak in support of the motion, and think it is a very sensible idea to gather as much information as we can about what is a significant proposal, as Councillor Lawrence has indicated. At this stage, we've just been able to see, obviously, the information that the public has been able to see, and not any assessment, but being mindful that there's very significant nature of the heritage issues at stake here. I think it is entirely prudent and incredibly sensible to go down the path of seeking further information. So I say well done to Councillor Gatchimarici. One thing I think we absolutely have to make clear, because I've had some correspondence and seen some stuff on social media, and I think it's important because you want people to direct their energy into what is actually happening. The mansion is not proposed to be demolished, and I think it's important to make that clear. I think some people are under the mistaken perception that that is the case, and that isn't the case. There are still, despite the fact that the mansion is probably, along with the clock tower, I think one of the least likely buildings in the whole of Moonee Valley to be knocked down. It won't be. There are still some significant heritage issues at stake here, and it is incredibly important that we get as much information as possible about them, so that when that time does come to make a decision, councillors are fully informed and can acquit their statutory responsibilities with all of that knowledge that we will have. So happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor? Councillor Sypek. Sorry, Councillor Sypek, you've just your sound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also happy to support the motion to seek further information. And Councillor Marshall reminded me something when she mentioned the clock tower. Well, I remember 40 years ago, our current Citizen of the Year, Frank de Blasi, solely handedly stopped the demolishing of the council clock tower building, and that was going to be converted into a 6-storey tower. So nothing is that sacred, because there's always someone out there willing to do something a little bit better. So like I said, I'm very, very happy to get further information. And I do agree with Councillor Marshall. This is the mansion is a wonderful building, and it should never be touched.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, happy to support this notice of motion, and it's fairly common practice for us to seek external support and refer matters to external consultants, particularly when we mightn't have someone with the extensive experience necessarily in-house, and I think particularly noting engaging a landscape architect or arborist that has got that experience with heritage sites is really important. So this is something that council does quite often. It's very, very positive that Councillor Gauchi has now got this in writing, so it does happen on this occasion. But I think getting, as all the councillors that have spoken so far have said, ensuring that we have as much information as possible by as many experts as possible is really important when this will be decided later down the track. So yes, well done, Councillor Gauchi, and yeah, let's hope common sense prevails and we will support this motion. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? No, as there was no opposition, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, the next notice of motion is number 2020-17, potential enclosed dog park at Travancore, and I call on Councillor Marshall to present.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council writes to the local member and relevant ministers seeking advice as to whether the land behind Flemington Primary off Flemington Street could be used in part for an enclosed dog park, and note that community consultation would occur prior to any use being agreed on with the state.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on your motion?
I'll speak briefly just because I'm mindful that there's still a bit to go tonight. But firstly, can I just thank Sean Michelini from the Moonee Valley Young People's Committee, who submitted a question to our last council meeting, and that motivated me to put forward this notice of motion. And in our recent discussions about enclosed dog parks, sadly, we didn't have any site in Moonee that was being under consideration. And the reality is we do have constraints in Moonee and limited sites that would actually be large enough to accommodate an enclosed dog park. So this is actually quite a large piece of land, and it currently probably doesn't have as many multi-uses as lots of our other sites in Moonee do. I understand that the facility there is associated with the Royal Children's Hospital and mental health facility, and I'm sure most of us in our part of the world have heard various rumours about what might end up being used, the site might end up being used for over time, including potential uses associated with Mount Alexander College. Obviously, the Flemington Education Precinct Plan that's occurring, there's a whole range of things that potentially could happen. But for me, the benefit of a dog park, even on an interim basis, is ultimately if the state decides to do something with the land, it would be relatively simple to dismantle an enclosed dog park. So I think that that's a real benefit. But also we know that in Moonee, lots of people do have dogs. Some of them are able to roam in off-lead dog parks, but some of them certainly would benefit from having an enclosed space. So look, we'll write, we'll see whether we get any response and work out what, if anything, is proposed with the land, but otherwise we'll take it from there depending on what the nature of the response is.
Madam Mayor, I just wonder if we could have a point of clarification.
Yep, that's fine.
And just relates to what the actual area is. It just says off Flemington Street. I'm just not aware of what area it's enclosing.
Councillor Marshall, your mic's off.
Sorry. There's a big park or oval that sits behind Flemington Primary. There's buildings there too, but I think probably certainly ward councillors would know exactly where I'm talking about. If there's any doubt, Councillor Owens, we can pull up a map if you like, but it's a very big space that sits behind Flemington Primary. You've got Flemington Street and then there's some buildings there, and Elite Swimming is also just near there. So it's a large space, so you wouldn't enclose the whole thing. That's not what's intended, but it's just working out whether part of that could be used for an enclosed dog park.
Councillor Lawrence, did you need a map?
I just would have been nice to get a map of the area just so we could actually have an appendix, some sort of reflection on exactly what it encloses.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Now, Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and Councillor Lawrence does raise a point that probably those who aren't necessarily familiar with Flemington Street or the back of Moulton Street wouldn't actually know that this parcel of land exists. So even if you just punch Flemington Street into Google Maps, the actual large parcel of land, and it looks like an old football oval, it's a little bit larger than the oval they've got set up at Flemington Primary School. It's quite large, and it does have there's a little aged care in the corner. I think the dog has actually just heard you say dog, Councillor Marshall, because she's actually got up and started having a whinge as soon as we started talking about dog parks. Look, I think we know how popular the Elf Pierce Dog Park is. Obviously, I was more than happy to throw my support behind our grant application for a potential dog park in Essendon West. And I think one down in the southern end of the municipality would definitely not only be utilised, but extremely welcomed by the residents. And I spoke last time we were moving a motion for the dog park funding that plenty of people in these troubling times have got a lot of support out of their pets. We obviously all value our pets, but particularly for those people who are isolated, pets have been a little bit of a rock for a lot of people I know that live alone, and so particularly when over the next 24, 48 months, when we're out of this COVID world or living a COVID normal or whatever we're doing. A dog park is an excellent way for people to get outside and to socialise. It does so much good for everyone's mental health. So more than happy to support it. Jules here, she supports it as well. And yeah, definitely have a look in Google Maps, even for those people that aren't necessarily, or that are online watching and aren't necessarily familiar, because it is a very large expanse of land, and only a portion of it would need to be used for a dog park. So more than happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack.
Thanks for putting up the motion, Councillor Marshall, and obviously it's a motion in response to a genuine question from a member of the community. It's not saying that there will be a dog park there, though. I mean, what we've got to do first of all is work with the state government about whether they would entertain the idea, and then the next bit about that is obviously about some community and other consultation that will need to take place, because there are, as people have pointed out, a number of buildings surrounding it, And some of those places that are surrounding it are very sensitive places that are providing very sensitive services to people with mental health issues and other matters. And so it's not a fait accompli. And whether the state government would entertain a dog park there on a permanent basis, or give us at least the opportunity in the Moonee ward, the chance to find or locate or think more about what might be done in the off-leash dog park question, because we've got a real paucity of land availability in the neighbourhoods. But there might be options that come up. And I would hope that residents who have some concern about this and all the rest of it see it as not just a stopgap measure, but one where we might be able to actually do something very positive, respond to an issue that has been raised as a good idea, and also down the track use that as an opportunity to evidence why we might do look to another place if we have to, should the state government decide that its plans are to continue to develop it or use it in another way. So it just makes sense. Good idea. Give it a rip. That's what I reckon.
Give it a rip. Thanks, Councillor Cusack. I have been advised by governance that we can do a screen share of where the land is. Councillor Lawrence, if that's if you'd like that.
That would make it great. I've had a look on Google Maps and it's not very clear at all. So
yep, no problems. We're
that
just
would
going.
be very helpful. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's okay. So Councillor Marshall, as it's your motion, it's probably the little hover thing is on there. Just confirm with Councillor Marshall that's what you're talking about. Councillor Marshall, are you there?
Sorry, I'm muted and I'm nodding my head going, yes.
Oh, sorry, I can't see the screen share.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
That's the area. Is that clear enough for councillors to sort of see where it is? If you sort of look off Flemington Street.
Yeah, maybe
councillors have got their bearings.
Yeah.
If there's any councillors, are there any points of clarification in regards to that land?
Just one further point. Who actually owns it now, Madam Mayor? Other than the state government, which department? Is it Education Department or?
We think it might be health or education. It's not entirely clear, so that all need to be clarified. But from my understanding, it's currently got the mental health related uses. So.
Does that answer the point of clarification? Well, we obviously don't know exactly, but it gives an indication.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All councillors are clear in terms of the land we're talking about? Yeah, great. Now, Councillor Cusack, I believe you finished speaking. Yeah. Now, did any other councillor want to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? So all those in favour is Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Soros, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Gatchmarici, Councillor Nation, Councillor Marshall. All those against is Councillor Sypek. That motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is notice of motion number 2020-18- rebate relief for pensioners during COVID, and I call on Councillor Soros to present her notice of motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that Council receives a report on increasing the full pensioners rebate paid by Council from $20 to $50 during the current financial year, that would be the 2019-20 year, to provide relief for pensioners during the COVID pandemic.
Sorry, that time I was muted. Thank you, Councillor Soros. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Soros, would you like to speak to the item?
I will. I'll just give a little bit of a background. So the Municipal Rates Concession Scheme provides government funding for the concessions. The level of concession for 2019-20 is either $235.15 or 50% of the total rates and charges, whichever is less. Residents must apply to council for the concession and applications are checked for eligibility. The concession is deducted from the approved accounts before payment by the ratepayer. The State Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS, provides guidance around the assessment and granting of retrospective applications. Council also provides an additional $20 rebate available to all ratepayers on a full pension as assessed by Centrelink. So given earlier tonight we've spoken about so many grants and so many people reaching out for funding through businesses and through their workplace and whatever they are applying for to get some support. Our pensioners, we have approximately 7,700 that get a rebate through Moonee Valley Council. These people are limited with their income. They're limited for the opportunity to obtain further financial income. And a lot of them are struggling. So they may be on a full age pension, they may be on a disability pension, they may have other reasons that they can't, or they're on a pension for whatever reasons, and their finances are limited. And I just thought that given we're looking at so many people in our community that are reaching out for support and help, that as a one-off, this would be a great idea for those people in our community that would benefit through this. So I calculated 7,700 approximately residents or eligible pensioners in our municipality. So it's about 230,000. As was mentioned earlier tonight, there's about $455,000 of grants that have gone out and funding to 62 applicants. So I don't think this is a huge amount given the amount of people that we would be providing it for. So I'm looking forward to a report coming back. I don't know if I'll be back on council or not. I'm hoping to be, but anyway, if I am, it'd be great to see this and you know, just to provide that little bit of extra support for those people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Soares. I've just had a question come through from governance, just in terms of you're talking about this financial year, 2020/2021.
If that's the financial year that we're in at the moment, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, we've already had the financial report for 2019-20, Councillor Soares, but anyway, an easy mistake to make. Look, 7,700 pensioners, it's pretty good bang for your buck, I would have thought. What are we supporting each of them? $30 each. $30, what does that get you these days? Not very much. But for a pensioner, it probably gets them a great deal. And to be thought of, considered and respected, the aged population in Moonee Valley, I don't think we really, I mean, we have a October is a month that we normally have the seniors week. Well, I don't think that's going to be happening too much this year. So we're not probably likely to be spending very much in the seniors week for different activities and promotions, etc. So maybe some of those funds could potentially be redirected for this purpose. And I commend Councillor Soares for thinking of our older adults, so we say, in our municipality, and supporting them is an important part, particularly during this time. A lot of them are isolated. A lot of them are not able to get out because of the restrictions at the moment, and this may be a little bit of support that helps them along the way. So full marks for bringing it forward. It's only a report to potentially be brought back to council anyway. This is not agreeing to the proposal. It's only just to see if it's A, can be done from council's financial position, and B, that to be voted on again once the report comes back to council. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak on this? Councillor Sarkic.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I totally agree with this. I originally brought up the original rebate of $20, which wasn't much, but it was something. I'm glad to see that we're going to go up to 50, but I'll give you a little bit of history about the rate rebate by the state government. In 1983, it was 50% of the rate, and it has never been indexed by any state government since 1983. And I think it's high time that this government actually starts helping the pensioners in the local community of every council. And if we can increase the rebate from the state government for pensioners, that would be a fantastic thing. But once again, Madam Mayor, we as council, we're doing our best, we're trying our best, and we're supporting even our pensioners, not only our local businesses, not only like our residents, but also our pensioners. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support it and receive a report. Even looking at the crunching of numbers, what was it? The 7,700 pensioners. Is that the number? And remember, this would be pensioners that are rate payers and that are entitled to a pension rebate. So they need to have a pensioner concession card or Veteran Affairs Gold card. That's the standard for us at City of Moonee Valley. So look, it might only be 3,000, or it might be 2,500. So the total cost to council might not be right up at that $230,000 mark. So happy to provide a report. I guess from an administration point of view, council in that report will have to just assess if people have already paid their rates up front. It's obviously September. Many people have their notices already. Some might pay straight away. So if they are eligible, that we might have to credit it on or work out how to do that in retrospect. So, but look, it's only asking for a report to see if it's financially viable and to see if it's possible. So I'm happy to support that and receive a report back.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? No, Councillor Cusack, then Councillor Sharp.
Would have been happy to let Councillor Sharp go. Well, obviously it makes sense, and I don't have any qualms with it. And I'm supportive of that notion, just in terms of the mechanics of it. Why wouldn't you just reduce the last quarter instalment, for argument's sake, as the year runs out? But I just want to pick up a point that Councillor Sypek made about and what it goes back to is actually the share of the tax dollar that council gets. And many people don't realise that local government gets, I think it's 4% or 3% on average of the tax dollar. So when you talk about what the rates are and so on like that in this for being spent in your neighbourhood and all the rest of it, and people are concerned about how much is being asked of the community. It's clearly because you can't rely on things like, especially in the urban councils like ours, on getting things like the special grants money and so on like that that's available, and from government, from federal and state governments. So it is a critical question, but it may be as one for a motion to the Municipal Association of Victoria at its council meeting or ALGA. On the other side of it, I think that there is only a touch of humanity about sort of taking it up to $50. I think the 20 that we've already committed, it's not a lot of money over and above that. And frankly, somewhere along the line, I'm sure that a pensioner could possibly put that $50 to better use than a lot of other uses that it may or may not be put to. So I'm quite happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 11.4 on the agenda is notice of motion number 2020-19- grant application for the construction of a new J.A. Fullerton Pavilion, and I call on Councillor Sharp to present her notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor. My iPad has died, so I'm going to be reading it, but I might mess up the words. But in saying that, I need to make a slight adjustment. So the notice of motion would read: the council considers submitting a grant application for the J.A. Fullerton Pavilion through the World Game Fund in November, in brackets, when the next round opens, subject to the notification of the state government funding for the North West City deal.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Everyone's clear with what's been moved? Yep. Can I please have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, sorry about that change on the floor. We've had the late notification just on Friday regarding that other grant option, and I just want to sort of incorporate that in there, just just so we don't have two things going at once. So I just thought this was a clearer way to do it. Obviously, the J.A. Fullerton, we lodged an application for the construction of this pavilion, which is desperately needed. A couple of months ago, we missed out on that funding. So trying again through this, obviously through the North West City deal is a priority, and then potentially through this World Game Fund. So I hope that's self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Lawrence.
I'll be very brief, Madam Mayor, and as many irons in the fire as you can possibly get for these grants is what it's all about. If you can support, get the funding out of external sources, then it's got to be good for the ratepayer, but also for the project that's involved. And in this case, the grungy pavilions that are being replaced by the J.A. Fullerton Pavilion are going to be fantastic. So here's hoping we get one of the two, Councillor Sharp, and I applaud your endeavours in trying to get this up, because others would have given up a long time ago. But let's hope we get something out of this, and that the pavilion gets built. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support Councillor Sharp in her endeavour with this project. She's been a great advocate for sports and for this pavilion in the Buckley Ward, and I wholly commend her tenacity to keep bringing this up all the time. And if we can, like Councillor Lawrence said, get external funding, this would be another win-win for Moonee Valley. And this would be another project that would be a post-COVID infrastructure build that will be virtually proofing our sporting facilities within Moonee Valley. So I highly commend Councillor Sharp and Councillor Lawrence for their endeavours in the Buckley Ward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 11.5 on the agenda is notice of motion number 2020-20- relocation of the farmers market, and I call on Councillor Cusack to present his notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Does this mean I have to read the whole thing?
Yes, you have to
It's in the
say
papers. Okay.
what you're moving. Just hold on. Well, confirm with, if there's no change to what's in the papers. Governance, can I just confirm if Councillor Cusack has to read it or if he can move what's in the agenda?
Mayor, it's acceptable for Councillor Cusack to move as it's already been presented in the agenda, which is publicly available.
Okay, so what words does Councillor Cusack need to use? Sorry, Governor.
Mayor, it might just be helpful if Councillor Cusack gives a short synopsis of his notice of motion as he sees fit.
Thank you. Councillor Cusack, so what are you moving?
Well, Mayor, on the basis of providing a short synopsis, so the motion is as in the papers for this council meeting, and but in brief terms, first of all, I'm calling on the council to enter into immediate discussions with authorised representatives of the farmers market to assist them to shift the market to another site in the Flem Ascot Vale area by late 2020. The second part of that is to acknowledge that, first of all, there are issues in relation to using council land, and that if there is a site in the Flem Ascot Vale areas that is council property, to obviously assess the viability of possible sites, provide a long-term location for the market to operate from, and expedite any planning requirements that are for this, such as advertising of the intended use of the council site, and noting the time frame that the market has to vacate the MAC. I'll talk about that in a minute. The third point is that as a priority, can give consideration to the Flemington Farmers Market potentially utilising the Riverside Golf and Tennis Club car park on Sunday mornings as per point 2 above. And the final part is that should there be no council land that's an option, that council expedite or facilitate discussions with government departments, authorities, community organisations or businesses in the Flem Ascot Vale areas that might also be considered as viable sites for the relocation of the market.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. So moving as what's in the papers, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to your motion?
Righto. The Flemington Farmers Market has been located on the site of the Mount Alexander College for about 10 years. And many people, I'm sure, from across the whole of the municipality, not just Flemington Ascot Vale, have been to that market over time. Council has used it on a regular basis itself for promoting particular activities, things like the Smart Gardens program and the likes of that. So unfortunately, and fortunately in one other sense, the Mount Alexander College is going through a rebuild and is looking to virtually double its size, and that rebuild will start in the very near future. The market has had to shift as a consequence of COVID off-site and is operating on a temporary basis at the Ascot lot, food truck lot, but is not able to continue there because obviously it's not the appropriate site. It's a temporary base for them. They can't go seriously back to the Mount Alexander College by the end of this year. They will need to move on. Councils, this is really a business matter, of course, and but council's involvement in it is really important here. As I said, it's been it's a well-loved and highly considered and market. It has a sentimental value, not only because of the 10 years that it had at the Mount Alexander College, but the years beforehand at the showgrounds. It ties in classically to Moonee Valley 2040, and it's an important way for many people to access food that from farmers that they consider as a really appropriate food for their diets. It's also about our healthy community, the way people mix, and it's also about the vibrancy of our communities in terms of its well-being. And while this is a commercial matter on the site, it's important that we try and keep it in the Flemington Ascot Vale area. And I'd like to be able to say Flemington is the absolute place that we can find something, but it's not necessarily it. Putting the market on other sites is a really fraught issue. And in terms of consultation with the people who run the market, there has been a discussion about the potential to look at Riverside. Now, that's not taken up the whole car park, so I don't want to set the hounds running after this one. There is a portion of the car park, possibly 50 parks, but that leaves more than about 75% of the car park open on a Sunday morning that could be easily used for the market. Its great advantages down at Riverside, that first of all, being on council land, it will return $1 ultimately to council that can be used to continue to revitalise and build the area. It also has significant, obviously, access for parking. Now, we can save a lot of issues with the golfers and all the rest of it because there is enormous amounts of parking down in Wood Street and up and down other roads in the nearby area that wouldn't interfere at all with residents. It complements all of the bits and pieces that happen in that area, whether it's on the golf course, whether it's the tennis courts, whether it's the netball. It has the restaurant at the golf course. It also would bring cross promotion and so on like that into the area. It has a huge population, young population, and a growing population around Ascot Chase. It's highly accessible by road because it's got a number of entrances coming out of Whiskey Hill along Sanford, down Newsom Street and all the rest of it. It's ideal for walkers, dog walkers, people coming from the other side of Maribyrnong across the bridge at Newsom Street. And of course, it's highly accessible for anybody who's riding bicycles and the likes of that. If all things are equal, council still needs to obviously do the consultation with residents. It will still need to talk to the users of the golf course and all the rest of it. It will need to advertise because there's obviously council land, and therefore it has to give opportunities to others who might want to use that space and have a consideration of it. And we would undertake to do all of those things. This motion is about assisting a business that has been hit by COVID and by unfortunate need to move, that is very, very much a key in Flemington, Ascot Vale. It's very identifiable down at this end of the earth. We need to support this business in our area, to maintain it in our area. It will be, it has long-term opportunity for council in terms of reputation, in terms of continuing to form that classic link that we've had for way over 100 odd years between the farmer and the farmer's gate and the people who live in Moonee, in Flemington, Ascot Vale, that has been forged through our relationship with the showgrounds, the race course and the likes of that.
Cusack, would you like a short extension?
No, I'll just be very quick now.
Sure thing.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Short extension. So it's critical that we actually sit down and have a think about how we're going to support this. I'm not talking about any preferential business or any of those sorts of things about rates or rent or anything like that. Those things will all be a commercial discussion. But I think that at the end of it all, if we're talking about growing Riverside, expanding its opportunity and making it really, really relevant to the community, that's one great point. But the other one is, most importantly, is about supporting to keep the Flemington Farmers Market in Flemington, Ascot Vale, or certainly in the southern end of the municipality, either on a private business, government land, or something that's council land.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall.
I'll just speak briefly because Councillor Cusack's obviously spoken at some length, but I also wanted to acknowledge that Councillor Cusack has been working closely with the operator of the market to see what might be preferable. And I think that's really important because we're not here to dictate to people where they should operate their businesses. That will be a decision made based on a range of factors, including where works best, based on site constraints, opportunities, all of that sort of stuff. So that's really important. Ultimately, this is a commercial decision about where to run a much loved market. And I certainly hope that it can stay in the southern part of Moonee Valley. You've indicated a number of sites. You know, there are issues with potential other sites that we could look at, but they will be explored. And the problem coming out of the inability to use MAC is in some ways a nice problem to have, because the school's popularity is just from the time we've moved into the area, it's incredible how loved the school is and what a turnaround it is. So that's wonderful that the local community is supporting the school, but that has flow-on consequences, obviously. So happy to support the motion. There are matters of process, obviously, that need to occur, but the temporary home that's been resolved for now, which has been great, obviously longer term won't work. So let's try and be as agile as we can within the appropriate processes and try and work with the operator to find a place where the market will work and where its future will be secured long term.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to support this motion. And when we're acknowledging effort of people, I want to give a shout out to the Ascot lot. Obviously, Jacob and his team there came to the party at the last minute to help the farmers market at least have a home for part of this lockdown for next to nothing of a cost. So many thanks to the team at the Ascot lot. They managed to keep the farmers market functioning, and then hopefully we have a new home for it. And as my fellow ward councillors have said, hopefully still somewhere where everyone in the southern end of the municipality can access the market. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Oh, I saw both hands at once. I'll go Councillor Sypek first, then Councillor Sorais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, Councillor Cusack, would you, when in your notice of motion, you said at point 3 that you want this to be the priority site. From what I can hear, there could be other sites available. So would the priority making this priority site maybe be counterproductive to what other sites there could be? And I'm just sort of making my suggestions too, would be like, imagine closing down Pinot Crescent for a weekend. I reckon that would be a fantastic site for a farmer's market.
Councillor Sypek, sorry, just so I can clarify, are you debating the motion or are you asking for a point of clarification?
I'd like to speak on it, but I'd just like to ask for a point of clarification. Would prioritising, could that be taken out of because there could be other sites that could be available as well? So
you wish to move an amendment?
It's not. I don't think it's an amendment. It's just one word.
Well, it would be an amendment, Councillor Sypek, if you wanted to go down
that okay.
line.
I'll try.
So you want to move the amendment that in point 3. So I'm
not
just trying to
priority site.
So do you want it to read not as a priority, council examine the proposal, or would you just like to remove as a priority? So it reads, council examine the proposal put forward by Flemington Farmers Market.
Correct, yeah.
The second one, so, okay, so you're moving as an amendment to remove the 3 words as a priority, correct?
So can I just ask as a point of clarification, Mayor, because this might be fundamental to how people view this amendment. Councillor Cusack, it's my understanding that the priority, if you like, at this stage of the operator would probably be Riverside based on the information we have available. Is that?
Well, that's correct, Councillor Marshall. As the motion reads, we've asked council to look at any site that might be available on council land across the Flemington Ascot Vale areas, but that the Riverside option is one that was proposed by the market themselves. And so as a priority, look at that, how that might go ahead. It doesn't discount any other options.
Does that answer your point of clarification, Councillor Marshall?
Yes, it does, and it goes to my point about not imposing our will and dictating where people want to run their businesses.
So, Councillor Sypek, you still wish to move that amendment?
No, look, obviously it's been explained that, you know, Councillor Cusack's explained it quite well. So the options are open that if other sites are available, we will look at them as well. So I'm happy with that.
Yep, good.
Okay, so just confirming you're not moving an amendment.
No, I'm not moving it, so I'll just keep talking then.
Okay.
Yep,
that's fine.
And like I said, Pinot Crescent would be, you know, like, I mean, maybe this market could move around, you know, 1 week here, 1 week there, 1 week everywhere. I mean, before we were in COVID last year, I went to a lot of, you know, farmers markets in other councils, and they weren't in the same place all the time. So it was like a bit of a moving feast. So like I said, Pinot Crescent would be great. South of Norwood Street would be fantastic. And one of the reasons why I didn't vote for the dog park in the previous notice of motion is because I thought that would be a great site for this farmers market. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any, Councillor Sorais, sorry, I did say I'll come to you next.
That's okay. Just Councillor Cusack earlier mentioned the years before that this market was held at the showgrounds. Am I correct in repeating that? Thank you. Yep. So maybe that's another, I'm assuming that would come into your notice of motion as to perhaps another possibility. I'm curious as to know why they're no longer there.
To clarify, the showgrounds actually belong in the City of Melbourne. So they are the planning authority. So it would have nothing to do with our council. On the other side of that as well, they were forced to move out of the showgrounds when the showgrounds expanded and changed the way the show was operating. And so therefore there was a whole period of many weeks in about the second or third year they were there where they couldn't operate at all. And of course that meant that farmers who were bringing produce down had nowhere to go. And so this was significant lost opportunity and continuity, and it certainly is not a clever business plan.
Councillors, I'll just sort of bring us back to the meeting. Does that answer your point of clarification?
It does, but just things that came to my mind, perhaps Crane Street stables, perhaps like Councillor Sypek had mentioned, you know, that land for the we could have both. We could have the off-leash dog park in the market. That'd be interesting. But on a more serious note, yeah, I support the motion. I think, yeah, we need to, I love that Flemington market. I've been a couple of times, so it'd be great to see that it continues on. And as Council Nation said, thank goodness for the Ascot Lodge coming to the party and supporting these people. And that's a great spot too. So who knows where this goes, but it will be interesting to see the outcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Any other councillor? Councillor Gatchmarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have tonight tried not to speak too much on too many things that everyone else has already covered, but I just thought it was important, given the comments a little bit earlier about moving the market around, to proceed with caution on that. I don't think that lies at the heart of how farmers markets operate. I think for me, I'm wholly supportive of Councillor Cusack's motion exactly as it's worded. The value that the farmers markets bring to our communities is often about the proximity to areas where people, like Essendon North Farmers Market's a perfect example near us, where everyone walks to it, everyone actively engages in their local community in going and buying their produce and playing on the swings and buying their coffee while they're there. I would hate to think that we would move it around from a week-to-week basis. I think that would disincentivise people visiting it. And Flemington was an incredible farmers market, significant in size. So I think the location has to be one which is appropriate to it. And the one that's been considered as a priority is a good one for that. So that's my 5 cents, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchmarici. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Can't be left out of this one. look, I realise they need to find another place. I just hope there's some good consultation goes on with the golf club down there and the tennis club as well, and even the netballers for that matter. And the use of that car park on the Sunday morning, because knowing that golf is very much a weekend game when we're not in COVID, of course, and that it gets a lot of use, that car park down there on the weekends, and we don't want to overburden the area with other activities, shall we say. Not to suggest that it isn't a good location, just that I would be cognizant of the fact that others use it, and that needs to be consulted and consulted properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack, there was sort of some comments both ways. I think there was mostly support, but I will allow you to close if you'd like.
Mayor, I noticed Councillor Sharp has had her hand up.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, Councillor Sharp. I didn't see it. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Sharp. Sorry, Councillor Sharp, your sound isn't working.
That's right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I haven't been going to play with this too much tonight because I always seem to drop out. So, but you know, I think all around the table we are very aware of how important our farmers markets are. So, well done, Councillor Cusack, for getting this motion up and running. It's vitally important to continue its operation. When we lost the North Essendon Farmers Market for that little while, it was heartbreaking a few years ago. So certainly happy to see how your talks and consultation about the site progress. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't go to any more councillors now. So Councillor Cusack, if you'd like to close.
Just a couple of quick comments. Thank you very much, councillors, for your warm comments so far, and I hope this turns into the vote. The other, just in terms of sensitivities, Pin Oak Crescent, or locating a farmer's market right in the middle of where other people are doing their business, would seem to me to be a real problem. When we set up the farmer's market in North Essendon, there was considerable concern by the traders in that area about the impact on their trade. I would hate to think what it might mean if you put farmers market right in the middle of Pin Oak Crescent, when some of those traders would be clearly in opposition with these people, and some sort of potential level of distraction from them. The question about the other at Riverside, about the other users and the potential impact on the golf course and people driving there, I think all has to be considered quite carefully. And I wouldn't want to have a situation where you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. The way I'd like to see this unfold, and this is the job for the officers, it's got nothing much to do with me as a councillor right now, is to try and plan to get that addressed and work around that. And but the way I see it is that there's 50 spaces plus possibly a couple of others that flow out. That's still leaving, and I haven't done the count, but there's certainly many more than 50 spaces left over. And there's still parking up Stanford Road and all that sort of stuff that is beside the golf course that doesn't interfere with any residents and the likes of that. And most farmers market attendees are quite willing to take a stroll. They're not like people who are going in the front door of Woolies as a rule. The motivation is very, very different. And I think that you've got a very good operator who's prepared to talk to council and prepared to talk to any other people who might be impacted by it. But I think the long-term benefits here are superb. And the big benefit is about keeping it in the Flem or Ascot Vale areas. I've noted a priority that's been decided by the operator so let that become part of the discussion with council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. So I'll put that item to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, that's all the notices of the motion, everyone. So we're now on to item 12 on the agenda, which is urgent business. And I do believe there is one item of urgent business tonight. Councillor Gauch-Marici.
Madam Mayor, I'd like us to consider an item of urgent business regarding our COVID reopening roadmap. It'll include things around pools, libraries, and traders.
Thank you, Councillor Gauch-Marici. We obviously have to decide whether this is urgent, Councillor Nation.
Sorry, Mayor, just noting what the urgent business may be about and the reference to reopening pools, because I've previously declared a conflict of interest for an indirect conflict of interest for conflicting duty in regards to leisure centres. I don't know if I should declare that now or wait to see if the urgent business is accepted.
I think that you can declare it now, and if you're declaring that as an indirect, is that right, Councillor Nation?
Yeah.
And we
based on the synopsis that Councillor Gauch-Marici has given, I will declare a conflict of interest. So maybe if I can get put into the waiting room, and I'm just going to take the dog out the front for a wee as well. So hopefully I'm not too long.
Get governance to transport you out.
All right, thank you.
Oh, very efficient governance. Thank you, Councillor Gauch-Marici. So we need to consider if this is urgent first. So is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Marshall. Councillor Gauch-Marici, would you like to speak on why it's urgent?
As many residents watched on Sunday, we have a staged roadmap of potential reopening. I'm conscious that a number of those items may occur whilst we are in caretaker mode. So I'm just wanting to ensure that we have considered some of the potential reopenings before we go into caretaker mode.
Thank you, Councillor Gauch-Marici. Councillor Marshall.
Yes, in addition to the points raised by Councillor Gauch-Marici, obviously the agenda was prepared before the step-out arrangements were announced on Sunday. So I think in light of that timing, this isn't a matter that could have been raised, and also in light of the additional point that Councillor Gauch-Marici has raised, I think that this is something that is urgent, and certainly we need to have plans in place before the 28th.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would anyone else like to speak on it being urgent? No, so I'll put it to the vote whether this item can be considered. All those in favour? That is Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Sarose. Oh, my screen has frozen. Sorry, my screen's frozen. Hands up, everyone. I think I saw everyone's hand, actually. Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Sypek. Yes, sorry, that is carried unanimously. Councillors, can you still see me? Sorry, I dropped out for a second there. Sorry about viewers at home, the joys of home internet. Okay, so now that was carried unanimously. So now that's been accepted as an item of urgent business, I'll ask you to put forward your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that a report is brought back to the council meeting of 17 September with the view to considering the following in line with the COVID reopening roadmap. 1, the possibility of opening Queen's Park Pool earlier than previously scheduled. 2, identifying ways to support traders during reopening, in particular expanding outdoor dining spaces. And 3, recommencing library services, including library to your door and reunite with your reserves.
Sorry, muted myself. Thank you, Councillor Gauch-Marici. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Marshall. Councillor Gauch-Marici, would you like to speak on the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will I was going to say briefly, but I'm going to go through each one of the three, so probably not. In terms of Queen's Park pool, the Premier specifically referenced outdoor pools as part of step 2, which means it could be as early as 28 September if all of the criteria thresholds are met. Queen's Park pool obviously wasn't due to open until November. And we do know that outdoor activity is critical to people's physical and mental well-being. So this is one way for us to consider ensuring how our community needs can be met. In terms of part 2, we had a number of traders contact us regarding their concerns that the return to dining will primarily be outside and socially distanced. Many don't have that space on their frontage or capacity. So this is just to encourage us to think about innovative ways to think about how we support them in terms of things like using parking spaces or side streets around corners, areas that aren't quite in their defined permit area. There was a suggestion from someone around making a car park space behind Keeler Road a food park, for example, because obviously paying a delivery driver to deliver food versus someone walking it around behind your shop are very different dollar values when you're trying to run a business, and something around a corner is something you can accommodate compared to having to engage a delivery driver or giving 30% over to Uber. So just for us to be really innovative in how we think about working with traders, groups and associations, and also helping support traders work with their neighbouring stores if it means that a business that's not open after 5 o'clock allows them to use their frontage and work further up the street, that we can be more accommodating of those sorts of discussions. The library services have obviously been so very valued over the stages of the pandemic. And whilst I don't doubt that this will occur, I just want to make sure that we've captured it and endorsed it if we need to before we go into caretaker. I just really want to ensure that our response planning considers us reinvigorating the services that were so valued during the previous stages. The Reuniting Your Reserves and Library to Your Door have both had such incredible positive feedback from our community. In addition to obviously all the virtual services, our libraries have really pivoted. They've been fantastic. We're obviously mindful that the roadmap has stages and gates, and each of the proposed items have their own bunch of considerations. So the reason for bringing it back to a report is that none of these are committed to yet, none are guaranteed, I mean. So things like the heating of Queen's Park pool we know has been slated as a possible consideration, but that's where it's important for us to have an understanding of what the considerations behind each of these items are. And I'm sure if there are any really glaringly obvious criteria or items I've missed, that officers will bring those back as well. But it's just so critically for us to be able to consider how we support our community during the steps back, in line with their well-being and their expectations. These are questions that we're already getting and we haven't hit those steps. So if we can be really clear with our community and say, this is what step 2 does look like for us, and this is what we will be doing as soon as that criteria threshold is met, that's where we are hoping to bring back a report that reflects that. For anyone who missed out, we do get to have the fun of another council meeting on the 17th of September, so you do get to see us all one more time.
Lucky people. Thank you, Councillor Gatchmarici. Councillor Marshall.
I'm very supportive of this urgent motion, because we need to be agile enough that as soon as restrictions are eased in whatever form, that from that very point in time we are ready as a council to either have the pool open, because people will be desperate for physical activity that isn't walking or cycling or running. So I think that there would be a significant demand for the pool to open. The library services, I've had numerous people ask me about what's happening and why the Reuniting the Reserves stopped. So again, that needs to be ready to go as soon as it is able to, in my view. The point around having a plan for how we will enable hospitality to restart and doing every single thing we can as a council to facilitate that, around the creative use of spaces, not having red tape that in ordinary times might be entirely reasonable, but in times like these will be nothing other than barriers for people being able to restart their businesses. Because I certainly have that sense that there will be a massive amount of goodwill in our community to get out there as soon as people can, and to be dining out every night if necessary, or every day. And so we need to be able to facilitate that as a council, and to be able to look at a whole range of spaces and how they can be used to enable dining to occur in a safe manner. So I'm very supportive of the motion. I hope that the report comes back. Again, I'm not telling officers to write their report in a particular way. They will write it as they see fit based on their advice. But this is a time for creative and different thinking. It's certainly not a time for red tape. It's not a time for being risk averse. In that sense, it's about trying to look at every mode available to us as local government to help facilitate people to restart the business, to access services that are so valued and so important to their mental health. So I'm very supportive, and we'll look forward to receiving the report in a bit's time.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I first read this report, I had a few concerns, and I wasn't too sure what this all meant. But just reflecting on it, and I've read it a few times now, and I'm fully supportive of Councillor Gauci, and I commend her for bringing this notice of motion to council, because this is just another example of how Moonee Valley and I fully concur with what Councillor Marshall said. This is just another way that we as Moonee Valley Council are supporting our local community and supporting our local businesses. And we're organising ourselves, even in our last week, as councillors before caretaker, we're still doing what we can to just support our local businesses, support our local community, and to get facilities like this up and running post-COVID. This is a great initiative by Councillor Gauci, and I fully commend it, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor? No. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Swimming and water play, dining and reading. Three great pastimes for recreation and leisure pursuits for a lot of people, for most people. I'm probably not one for swimming in the colder months, and let's hope the water warms up a bit and the weather warms up a bit so that those that are keen on that type of pursuit can do it. I do know friends that swim regularly and would love to see that pool open and get out there. Not that they're the icebergers or anything, but they do like to swim in an outdoor pool. Dining, I take the point Councillor Marshall made. We have to do everything possible outside of the square. Red tape cut wherever possible to get our restaurants and dining facilities up and going again. These people are bleeding, absolutely bleeding, and they need some form of outdoor. If we've got to separate the tables another 2 metres in car parks, we'll do it, because we need to have innovative thinking of ways to support our local businesses. The library services, I know some of the elderly who are crying out for those services to be restarted again, because they're reliant on it. And we spoke about this before. The isolation of a lot of people is critical to their not critical, but is important in terms of it's affecting their mental health terribly. And so if we can do something if it means a book gets delivered, then it makes a huge difference to their lives. No, I think these items are important in a lot of ways to our community. And as Councillor Sypek pointed out, it's again a good example of Moonee Valley Council doing the innovative and thinking outside the square type of approach that probably a lot of councils aren't doing, and we can take our pat ourselves on the back and take some credit for this type of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an opportunity for council in a very short time, I'm afraid, to sit down and actually have a bit of a strategic think about what it wants to do in terms of this reopening and the roadmap. If we take this, if we use this as a starting point, we can possibly start to think about how this can become potentially a something where we can advocate to government for support and other areas if we can show that we're doing particular things in a particular way. So the challenge here, I think, goes straight back to the CEO and the officers to think very laterally about where all of these bits sit within a better and revitalised Moonee Valley, and how we can get assistance to do that. On the other hand, let's flip a bit. There are also what's clear in this motion is how Moonee Valley, through its planning, supports community. And there are three parts to this, obviously. There's the community that's using the library, which is one of the busiest things that we do and is so well patronised. So we really have to get something happening there, whether you're young or old or whatever. And to make sure that that returns, reunite with your reserves thing is actually reignited. The other part of that is the pool and how people look at themselves. It's very much about the identity that people have and how you get your exercise and so on like that. And we all love Queen's Park, so bringing as many more people into that area as we can, as early as we can, for a different type of activity is a really good idea. And the final part of that, and I suppose those two combined, is about the health of the community up here and in physically. But on the other side of that, I want to just spend a second, if I can, on talking about the support to traders. I think we need to really start thinking about, obviously, a concerted and planned approach, as Professor Gauci, as Councillor Gauci-Marucci. I don't know what I'm doing. It's late at night. Sorry. There's Councillor Gauci-Marucci has said, but some of the things that and alluded to by Councillor Lawrence about cutting through red tape. But I think we should be elastic enough to think a bit about what are our fees and charges to help some of these businesses actually move into these laneways, move into the car parks and so on like that, about how we can actually support pop-up stuff. So maybe there might be things that need to be advertised or some lighting brought in and so on like that. It may be a bit about making a place look nicer and cleaner and so on like that, so that it becomes inviting. We need to also think from a council point of view about some of how we're going to communicate that generally to the community. What's our website doing? How are we working through our eco development people? And maybe what we could do is take an edition of Valley View or bring out a special one and aim it at everybody in the community and just talk about it from the point of view of supporting our traders, what our traders are doing. Get the traders associations from all of our neighbourhoods to sit down and actually put in a party piece, do those sorts of things and not be afraid and be a bit risk-taking, as Councillor Marshall said, in getting this stuff up. But I think the critical thing is if we can establish a strategic approach and a plan on this so we can actually use it as a base for us to start and also to approach other people.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor? No, well, I feel like there was only support thrown your way, Councillor Gauci-Marucci, so I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. I will, am I still muted? Sorry, no, you can hear me? Sorry, a few technical issues. I will ask governance if we can have Councillor Nation back in to the meeting, please. For viewers who are still joining us online at 10:10, Councillor Nation declared an indirect conflict of interest to the urgent business, so he went into the virtual waiting room, and I've just seen that he has rejoined us, so welcome back, Councillor Nation. Now, were there any other items of urgent business for tonight? Nope. Okay, so the next item of business is confidential reports, and there is one confidential report this evening. Councillors, can I have a motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to allow for consideration of confidential information under section 3(1)(a), being council business information, in particular being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. That is moved Councillor Nation, seconded Councillor Sypek. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. So this is where we say good night to everyone who has been watching until 10:10 on the internet. Thank you for tonight's meeting, and we will see you for one final meeting before we go into caretaker next week. So see you later, everyone. And yeah, we'll see you soon.